An office worker with glasses finishes his day, bidding a coworker farewell as the clock strikes 5, ready to head home. He walks home reflecting that the best part of his low-paying job is getting home on time, which gives him the freedom to indulge in his hobbies, specifically playing video games. Settling into his gaming chair, he prepares to play the 5th episode of a broadcast for a game titled, Unlimited Magic Academy, There Is No Limit to Love. He muses that this is a so-called otome game, a genre where the female protagonist can pursue romantic relationships with a variety of handsome male characters. While playing, he watches the main character get dumped, remarking that as a man himself, he failed to anticipate the male character's mindset, leading to this unfortunate turn of events. He notes a recurring pattern in the game. The villainous young lady character is consistently punished whenever she interferes with the main character's romantic pursuits. Reviewing one of the game's storylines, the Holy Night route, he recalls that the villainess ultimately dies after the knight she's involved with becomes possessed by the Demon King and is subjugated by the main characters. He finds the villainess's fate excessively tragic across all storylines, from the princely route where she is forced into a miserable marriage and abused, to the assassin's route where she is simply stabbed to death. It pains him that this one character, who appears in every route, only ever meets with unhappiness, forcing him to witness her tearful face over and over again. Exhausted, he lets out a huge yawn, wondering if these outcomes are what people refer to as tragic endings, and reflects on the grueling cycle of working all day only to spend his nights gaming and editing videos. The fatigue overwhelms him, and he decides he should take a quick nap before he has to return to work. His final thoughts before losing consciousness are a haze of potential causes for his demise, an overdose of energy drinks and relentless sleepless nights chief among them. The scene shows his desk littered with empty energy drink cans, his body slumped over as life leaves him. It is at this moment that all memories of his previous life come to an abrupt end. An abstract wash of light and shifting shapes represents his soul's transition from one existence to the next. A new world comes into view, a vast, walled city dominated by a castle perched atop a commanding cliff. The perspective zooms in from the cityscape to focus on a single, magnificent and sprawling mansion within its walls. He finds himself reborn as a small boy standing on a balcony, slowly coming to the startling realization that he is now in another world entirely. Believing he has been reborn into a game, he calls out, "Status open," trying to access a system menu, thinking he has started as an ordinary character. He desperately tries various commands like menu window and system control, but nothing happens, causing him to doubt whether he was truly reincarnated into the game he was playing. His frantic attempts are interrupted by a maid who addresses him as Kane-sama and asks if anything is the matter, forcing him to nervously dismiss her concerns. Inside, Kane sits quietly on a plush sofa while an older man, his father, watches him from across the room with a look of gentle worry. His father gives him a nod and then calls out, permitting someone waiting outside the room to enter. Kane's parents stand lovingly beside a bed, cradling a newborn infant in their arms. The child, Kane, looks on as his parents address him by his new name. His mother gently introduces him to the baby, telling him her name is Diana and that from this day forward, he is an older brother. A wave of profound shock and adoration washes over Kane as he gazes upon his new little sister for the first time. Overwhelmed with emotion, he stammers that she is unbelievably cute, like a real angel sent from heaven. His mind races with the fantastical thought that she is a literal angel mistakenly delivered to his family, and he feels a frantic urge to hide her before God can reclaim her. His parents share a laugh at his dramatic reaction, and his mother gently chides him to calm down so he doesn't frighten the baby. Kane looks down at the swaddled infant, his heart swelling as he gazes upon his sister, Diana. He whispers her name, Diana, and a sudden, shocking realization begins to dawn on him. It hits him with the force of a physical blow. This is the world of the otome game, Unlimited Magic Academy, and his sister is the villainess. Years pass, and a young Diana proudly runs up to Kane, showing him something she has accomplished just for him. Kane's internal monologue explains the premise of the game, a standard dating simulator known as Damik for short. He lays out the plot. A commoner protagonist gets a scholarship to a magic academy where she meets various male love interests, but the rival standing in her way is the haughty duke's daughter, his very own sister, Diana Elgrindark. Looking at his sweet, innocent sister, he wonders how this child could possibly grow into the beautiful but doomed villainess, reflecting on how the game's male characters all have tragic pasts that the protagonist must heal. He recalls his own character's role in the game. As Kane Elgrindark, he is fated to grow distant from Diana due to the pressures of being the heir and the classic "you're the big brother, so be patient" trope, which strains their relationship. The knowledge of her future fates haunts him: deportation, abandonment in a monster-filled forest, forced marriage to a much older man, or outright execution. He makes a firm resolution to change her destiny, convinced that if he raises her with kindness and protects her at every turn, she will never become the villainess she was in the game. He vows that he will protect Diana, his sister and family in this life, using the 16 years before the game's plot begins to ensure her safety. The two siblings, Cain and Diana, are seen together in a garden, sharing a quiet moment among the flowers. A montage of their childhood shows their close bond. Diana gives Cain a present while his arm is bandaged, and she playfully scales a curtain while he watches in amusement. Their shared activities continue as Cain attempts to paint a still life while Diana joyfully draws a crude face on the nearby wall. The sweet scene concludes with Cain playing the violin, providing the music for a gleeful, dancing Diana. Time has passed, and a slightly older Cain is seen jogging along a cobblestone path bordering the estate. He reflects that it has been a full year since he committed himself to protecting Diana, and his physical training has progressed to the point where running 10 kilometers around the mansion grounds is no longer a challenge. Though the guards initially tried to stop his rigorous training, he eventually won them over and began learning self-defense, noting with satisfaction that the body of an Otome game capture target is exceptionally suited for physical improvement. He also discovers his new mind possesses perfect recall, allowing him to learn and retain knowledge effortlessly, a trait he bitterly wishes he had possessed during his university exams in his past life. During one of his runs, he is startled to find a cloaked figure collapsed on the path just beyond the estate's moat. He rushes to the person's side, pulling back their hood to reveal the dirt-streaked and unconscious face of a young boy. Recognition is immediate and shocking. He knows the boy's face and his name instantly comes to mind: Ilvalino, a target character from the game. There is no mistaking him. This is Ilvalino from the game's most tragic storyline, the Assassin's Route, a boy who was supposed to be found by the game's protagonist after a failed mission. Cain looks down at the prone form of the young assassin, a pivotal figure from his sister's future now lying helpless before him. Realizing he has intercepted a key event, he kneels down and gently asks the unconscious boy if he is injured and if he is hungry. When Cain reaches for him, the boy instinctively flinches and strikes out defensively, but Cain, with his trained physique, easily catches the blow and pins him to the ground. He quickly apologizes for his forceful actions, explaining that he only wants to tend to the boy's injuries. Sometime later, the boy rests in a proper bed with his arm and leg bandaged, as Cain explains to his family that he discovered him lying unconscious near the back gate. Cain recites a platitude, stating that it is the duty of a noble to offer aid to anyone they find in trouble. A physician reports on the boy's condition, a broken leg, along with various cuts and bruises, and Cain's father agrees to let him recuperate in their home, deciding to handle things if the boy's family comes looking for him. Later, Ilvalino awakens and confronts Cain, demanding to know why he was saved instead of being left to die, triggering Cain's memory of the boy's tragic game plot where he suffers endlessly as an assassin until the heroine's kindness touches him. Cain knows that this boy, if left on his original path, would eventually have his heart shattered and go on a rampage, killing everyone, including Diana and Cain himself, sparing only the main character. Cain explains his actions using a saying: "Kindness shown to others is kindness that will eventually return to you," cryptically implying that saving Ilvalino is an act of self-preservation. Ilvalino confesses that he doesn't understand the meaning of Cain's words, and Cain simply tells him that he doesn't need to. With a gentle hand on the boy's forehead, Cain wishes him a good night, urging him to rest. Before leaving, he promises the now sleeping Ilvalino that they will share a meal together when he wakes up. Ilvalino awakens to find himself seated before a dazzling spread of delicious-looking food, his eyes wide with disbelief. Cain sits across from him, encouraging him to eat and not to worry about formal etiquette, even giving him permission to use his hands. Despite this, Ilvalino eats with impeccable manners, leading Cain to speculate whether he was secretly trained for infiltrating nobility or if he might be of noble birth himself. Cain cheerfully informs Ilvalino that he must eat well to recover quickly, making it clear he won't be permitted to leave the mansion until his injuries are fully healed, thereby preventing his fated meeting with the game's protagonist. He knows that simply preventing this one encounter isn't enough. To truly save everyone, he must find a way to stop Ilvalino from becoming an assassin in the first place. Their meal is suddenly interrupted by Diana, who bursts in demanding to know why her brother isn't having lunch with her, her outburst startling the already tense Ilvalino. Kane soothes Diana by asking about her lunch, and she proudly proclaims that she ate all her carrots, earning his praise. Seeing Ilvalino watching them, Diana quietly offers him a taste of her dessert, conspiratorially asking him to keep it a secret. She shyly asks if he would like some, her simple act of kindness leaving Ilvalino momentarily stunned before she flashes a bright, innocent smile. As Ilvalino watches Kane dote on Diana, who has fallen asleep in his lap, a complex and unreadable expression crosses his face. Ilvalino observes Kane's demanding daily regimen, from sword practice and magic to workouts and study, shattering his preconceived notion that the lives of nobility were nothing but idle indulgence. Diana runs up to Ilvalino, holding a book and affectionately calling him Al-Oniaishu, a term for an older brother. She asks him to read to her, and Ilvalino internally questions Kane's judgment, wondering if he's a narcissist for fawning over his sister when they share such a strong resemblance. He agrees and begins to read a fairy tale about a time when animals looked very different than they do today. When he finishes, Diana praises him for being smart enough to know about the animals mentioned, making Ilvalino realize she only retained the names and missed the entire point of the story. Kane appears and playfully quizzes Diana about the story's moral, which she can't answer, causing her to pout and Ilvalino to question Kane's teasing method. To resolve the situation, Ilvalino patiently offers to read the entire story again, instructing Diana to pay close attention this time. As he painstakingly sounds out the words with Diana sitting beside him, Kane watches from a distance, a look of pained sympathy on his face for the unlikely pair. A fortnight later, Kane presents Ilvalino with a pair of crutches, declaring that he is now well enough to walk, even if he can't yet run. With Ilvalino mobile again, Kane formally extends an offer, asking the young assassin to become his personal valet. Ilvalino questions his own worth, but Kane assures him he has proven himself trustworthy and has made a good impression on the entire household, especially Diana. Kane begins his pitch with the most enticing benefit first, a generous salary. He elaborates that since room and board are provided, Ilvalino would be free to save every coin he earns. Drawing from the painful memories of his past life, Kane passionately insists on the importance of financial security, declaring that money is essential for peace of mind. He explains the strategic advantages. As a chamberlain in the household of a great duke, Ilvalino could build connections and move through society without opposition. Ilvalino remains suspicious, wondering how Kane knew his name, but Kane brushes it aside, reassuring him that his duties as a valet will not prevent him from spending time with Diana. Kane finally reveals his true intention. He wants to keep Ilvalino by his side to prevent him from walking the assassin's path, pleading with him to stay with him forever and never disappear from his sight. The intensity and raw emotion of Kane's plea leave Ilvalino blushing furiously, completely stunned into silence. Kane allows himself a small, confident smile, thinking that such a reaction is only natural when a handsome Otome game capture target makes a heartfelt appeal. The grand Elgrindark family mansion stands resolute under a clear sky. The time has come for Ilvalino's departure, and Kane, his mother, and Diana gather by a carriage to see the fully recovered boy off. As Ilvalino waves goodbye, Kane holds his sister's hand, his mind already turning to his next monumental task, to find and systematically dismantle the tragic routes of all the other capture targets. He understands with absolute clarity that this is the only path forward if he is to protect his beloved sister, Diana, from the terrible fate that awaits her. Kane's mother comments on Diana's recent academic improvement, noting that she heard Ilvalino has been reading books to her. Ilvalino humbly deflects the praise, insisting that Diana's progress is entirely due to her own hard work and effort. Kane's mother worries that his constant spoiling will make Diana selfish, but Kane insists it's all because of her own talent and cuteness. Diana herself refutes the idea of becoming selfish by proudly declaring that she eats her carrots and other things she dislikes, a point which Kane readily supports. As they travel by carriage, Kane explains to his mother that his policy is not to spoil Diana, but to praise and encourage her growth. The mother notes Ilvalino's good manners and literacy, wondering if all orphans are so well behaved, but Kane explains that Ilvalino is one of the oldest at his orphanage. It's revealed that Ilvalino is from the Western Temple Orphanage and that his frequent trips to earn money were so common that his half-month absence while injured went completely unnoticed. The mother, dressed for an outing, listens intently as the children stand before her. Kane announces that they will be visiting the orphanage and that Ilvalino will be their guide for the day. Kane's mother questions how Ilvalino earns his money, a detail he has kept hidden. Upon arriving, Ilvalino announces that the building before them is the orphanage. Kane observes the children in the yard, some playing with a ball while others draw on the ground with stones. His gaze focuses on two girls sorting through small white pebbles on the ground. Diana observes that the children are all dressed in dirty clothes, her innocent comment hanging in the air as Ilvalino looks on with a grim expression. Cain kneels down to speak with his sister, telling her that the reason those children wear dirty and torn clothes is their fault. Diana looks at him in confusion, questioning how it could possibly be her fault. He begins to explain the structure of their society, stating that nobles like them can afford beautiful clothes because the common people give them a portion of the money they earn from their hard work. Diana processes this, asking if the people are sharing their hard-earned money with them, and Cain confirms that they are. She then connects the dots, asking if the reason the other children can't have beautiful clothes is because they gave their money to the nobles. Cain's mother clarifies that the situation is more direct. Those children are orphans and have no mother or father to buy them nice clothes in the first place. He continues his lesson, explaining that in exchange for the money they receive, aristocrats have a duty to solve the problems of the people in their lands, including caring for children without parents. Diana earnestly asks what she can do to help, and Cain explains the broad duties of nobles, such as providing food, keeping the peace, and protecting people from monsters, tasks too great for any single person. He advises her that the first step she can take is to simply become friends with the children, assuring her that once she does, she will naturally know how to help. With a reassuring pat on the back, Cain asks a nervous Ilvalino to introduce them to everyone. Diana eagerly runs toward the other children to play but trips over her own feet and tumbles to the ground. Cain and Ilvalino watch in shocked silence, momentarily frozen by her sudden fall. An orphan girl rushes to Diana's side, helping her up and checking for injuries as another boy looks on. The boy explains they were about to play a game of throwing stones and were one person short, inviting Diana to team up with him, an offer she accepts with a brilliant smile. Cain watches them, noting how tightly his own hands are clenched as he holds back the powerful urge to rush over and fuss over his sister. After a day of playing, the orphans wave goodbye to Diana and Cain, asking them to come and play again soon. Returning to the mansion, Diana, covered in dust and sand, runs to her mother to tell her about her day. She excitedly shows her mother her dirty hands, explaining that she was picking up strong stones from the other side of the river for their game. She happily explains they were playing a game called stone flicking. Cain observes his mother with admiration, thinking that even though she is a duchess, she doesn't scold her child for getting dirty but instead holds her hand and listens to her stories. Some time later, Ilvalino formally thanks Cain's mother, Arise, for allowing him to stay and recover, and she admits that while she was hesitant at first, she is glad he and her children had fun and made new friends. Cain also expresses his gratitude to Ilvalino for his help. As Ilvalino's carriage departs, Cain watches it go. Arise tells Cain that she has taken an interest in Ilvalino and has already spoken to the priest and the orphanage director to arrange for him to be sent to them for an apprenticeship next year. Cain is ecstatic, and his mother confirms that the orphanage director agreed, meaning that once his father gives permission, they will be able to take Ilvalino in permanently. Cain asks if his mother used her noble power, and she hints that she made a sizable donation that will improve conditions at the orphanage, from the food to the building's repairs. She reassures a stunned Cain that there's nothing wrong, as giving donations to temples and orphanages is a noble virtue and a good deed. Her eyes hold a gentle yet firm gaze as she speaks. Cain is struck by her commanding presence, realizing that this is the power and grace of the wife of the leading duke. A few days later, the family awaits the duke's return. Cain's father, having just returned home, addresses his son. After being away for a month, he playfully demands that Cain hand over Diana, prompting Cain to accuse him of objectifying his sister and violating her human rights, using surprisingly sophisticated terms. The family discusses the matter of hiring an attendant for Cain, with his father thinking it's still too early. Diana champions the idea, telling her father that Alma is very good at reading books and has been a good influence on her studies. Cain's mother teases him, pointing out that Diana has already started calling Ilvalino Big Brother, and that his position might be in danger. Amused and persuaded, their father agrees to interview Ilvalino and make his decision then. The scene shifts to Cain's father discussing a sensitive matter with an aide, bringing up an unpleasant incident involving Viscountess Fawcett from 5 years prior. The aide recounts the story. Viscount Fawcett had a secret child with a laundry maid, and when the Viscount and his wife found out the maid was trying to hide the child, a conflict arose. The enraged Viscountess hired an outlaw to murder both the maid and her child. The maid was later found dead, but the child's body was never recovered. The aide explains that while a commoner's death is no great matter, the illegitimate child had noble blood, which complicated things, leaving the authorities unsure of how to proceed. The aide reveals that their investigation into the boy Kane rescued shows a strong connection to the case. Viscount Fawcett is known for his red eyes, and the murdered maid had bright red hair. When the father asks for a description of the child, the aide states that he is about Kane's age, with bright red hair and red eyes. The father puts his head in his hand, realizing the boy's age likely matches as well. The aide reports that Il Velino does not seem to be seeking revenge and that Kane's interest in him is genuine, before asking if his lord wants him to separate the two boys. The father clenches his fist, signaling his decision to his subordinate. A few days later, Kane is spotted arriving at the orphanage by the children. He greets all the orphans by name, bringing them a new picture book to read. He inwardly remarks that his ability to remember all their names is a lingering skill from his past life as a salesman of children's toys. With his father's impression of Il Velino being positive, Kane is confident that the boy will be hired, allowing him to prevent the fated encounter with the protagonist and definitively avoid the assassin ending. Kane's mother praises Il Velino, noting that Diana's studies have improved significantly ever since he started reading books to her. Il Velino humbly accepts the thanks but insists that any improvement is due to Diana's own strength and effort. The mother expresses her concern that Kane spoils Diana too much, which might cause her to grow up selfish, though Kane believes it's simply a result of Diana's own cute abilities. Diana herself chimes in to declare that she won't be selfish, offering as proof that she eats her carrots, prompting a proud pat on the head from Kane. While riding in a carriage, Kane clarifies to his mother that his policy is not to spoil Diana, but rather to raise her through praise and encouragement. His mother remarks on Il Velino's politeness and ability to read, wondering if all orphans are like him, but Kane explains that Il Velino is the eldest at his orphanage, which must be a difficult role. Kane knows that Il Velino comes from a church orphanage in the West and that he often sneaks out to work, so much so that his half-month absence due to injury went completely unnoticed. The family, including Il Velino, stands together as they prepare for an outing. Kane informs his mother of their plan to visit the orphanage, with Il Velino serving as their guide. While holding his sister's hand, Kane internally wonders if the orphanage is where Il Velino hides the money he earns from his secret work. They arrive at the orphanage, a large, timber-framed building with children playing outside in the yard. Kane watches the orphans play their simple games with a thoughtful expression. He sees a group of children crouched on the ground, sorting through what appear to be small white stones. Diana innocently points out that everyone's clothes look dirty, her comment causing Il Velino to look away with a pained expression. Kane kneels before his sister and gently tells her that the reason the children are wearing dirty and torn clothes is their fault. A shocked Diana asks if it is her fault, and Kane clarifies that it is the fault of all nobles. He explains that nobles are able to live in wealth and wear fine clothes because the common people who live in the towns and countryside share a small portion of the money they earn. Using images of hard-working laborers, he illustrates that the common folk share what they earn with the nobles, which Diana understands as them sharing. Diana, however, is confused, asking why the orphan children can't wear beautiful clothes if everyone is sharing their money with the nobles. Their mother steps in to clarify the situation, explaining that those children, in particular, do not have a mother or father to buy them clothes. Kane continues the lesson, stating that because the nobles receive this money, they have a duty to solve the problems of the people, including caring for children who are left without parents. Diana earnestly asks what she can do to help, and Kane lists the broad responsibilities of the nobility: fighting monsters, providing food for the hungry, and mediating disputes to keep the peace. He smiles and tells her that the first and most important step is simply to become friends with them, and through that friendship, she will learn what she can do. Kane gives a hesitant Il Velino a reassuring pat on the shoulder and asks him to introduce them to everyone. Eager to begin, Diana takes a step forward but immediately trips over her dress and tumbles to the ground. Kane and Il Velino both gasp, their faces etched with shock and concern for her. Before they can react, one of the orphan girls rushes to Diana's side, helping her to her feet and asking if she is all right. An orphan boy then invites Diana to join their game of flipping stones, explaining that they needed one more person, and Diana accepts with a beaming smile. As the children play together, Kane watches from a distance, clenching his fists so hard his knuckles turn white as he resists the urge to rush over and fuss over his sister. At the end of their visit, the children of the orphanage wave them off, cheerfully asking them to come and play again soon. Returning to the manor, Diana, now covered in sand and dust, runs to her mother to tell her about her day. A colored portrait of the Duchess is shown, accompanied by text bubbles containing credits for the scanlation team. A man in a trench coat introduces himself as Wayne's Palavant, the butler of the Elgrendark family, interrupting two other men. He states that a member of his family wishes to adopt a boy with red hair and red eyes. One of the men asks what happened to Ilverino as Wayne's presents a large pile of gold coins. The man smirks, commenting on the boy's beautiful face and crudely asking if the Duke has peculiar hobbies. Wayne's expression hardens as he warns the man not to mock his lord, recognizing them as the scoundrels who murdered a maid and kidnapped her child. The man counters, stating it took great effort to establish his organization and that the boy has unique skills, demanding double the payment to return him. The leader then suggests that if they simply get rid of the butler, all the money will be theirs, and his subordinate lunges forward to attack. Wayne's moves in a blur, swiftly and brutally cutting down the two attackers with a sword hidden in his cane. He reminds the terrified leader that the head of House Elgrendark is the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Justice. With this authority, he continues, they can charge the man with any crime they wish and impose any punishment they see fit. He coldly states that it would be far easier for him to simply take the boy and eliminate them without paying a single coin. Wayne's gives the man a choice: take the money and disappear forever, or face the full power of the Elgrendark family. The defeated leader retreats from the area near the orphanage, leaving the money and the boy behind. Ilverino waits alone by a stone wall, his hood drawn up. Kane approaches him, mentioning that he heard Ilverino had visited the orphanage, donating a picture book and teaching the children new games. He adds that the priest was very surprised that Ilverino had managed to remember every child's name after only one meeting. Ilverino asks Kane about the side job he was promised, prompting Kane to explain that his own ability to remember names comes from his past life as a gaming commentator, where getting a name wrong would enrage his audience. Kane looks at Ilverino with an intense, knowing smile. He tells Ilverino he doesn't mind the side job but asks for a simple heads up, like the date he plans to kill someone, so Kane can cover for him and ensure he doesn't suddenly vanish. Kane then clarifies his true motive. He wants to avoid the massacre ending of the Ilverino route, where Diana, the other characters, and he himself are all killed, and he promises to support the orphanage so Ilverino can still see the children. He resolves that while he can't force Ilverino to abandon assassination immediately, he will keep him close and crush this tragic fate. Ilverino understands and agrees to attend the Chamberlain interview, though he doubts he will pass, but Kane reassures him that he'll be fine. On the day of the interview, the scene is set at the Grand Elgrendark mansion. Ilverino walks down a long, polished hallway, catching his own reflection in a window as he passes. He reflects on his red hair and red eyes, thinking to himself that they are the color of blood. His memories before the age of 4 are a blur, with his earliest recollection being of a red room, a gruesome scene of slaughter where two cloaked figures stood over a body. A voice from his past echoes in his mind, saying it was as if he were born from a sea of blood. He remembers that by the time he regained consciousness, he was already in an orphanage, with no memory of his life before that moment. Not long after, he was taken from the orphanage by the same cloaked figures. A montage of his brutal training flashes through his mind, being rewarded with bread for a successful kill, his hands and dagger stained with blood, and standing over his victims. He recalls that when he brought bread back to the orphanage, he saw a fleeting moment of happiness on everyone's faces. In the interview room, he stands before Kane's father and introduces himself as Ilverino, a resident of the Western Temple orphanage with no family name. The Duke begins the interview by asking a simple first question: "Do you like Kane?" Ilverino answers honestly, stating that he is grateful for Kane's care when he was injured and for his kindness toward the other orphans. As he speaks, the Duke's hand suddenly darts forward in a swift, unexpected movement. Ilverino flinches back, startled by the sudden, aggressive motion. The Duke feigns an apology, claiming his hand slipped, as the pen he was holding flies past Ilverino's head and embeds itself in the wall behind him. He then calmly informs Ilverino that he is aware of his dangerous side job, and that from this moment on, there will be no more requests for his services. With a smile, the Duke officially welcomes him, asking him to support Kane as a good friend and a person of understanding. Ilverino stands in stunned silence, realizing that the Duke knows everything about his past as an assassin. He cannot comprehend why the Duke would still choose to hire him, knowing the full truth of his dark history. His eyes widen with a mixture of shock, confusion, and a glimmer of hope. He collects himself and formally thanks the Duke for the opportunity he has been given. Later, Kane and the butler Wayne's present Ilverino with his new chamberlain's uniform, and Kane tells him it looks good on him. Wayne's lays out the terms of his employment. As a chamberlain, he must be intelligent and will be required to attend daily lectures with Kane, keeping pace with his studies. Ilverino adjusts his new attire as Wayne's wishes him good luck in his new role. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted by the sound of Diana wailing loudly from down the hall. Kane rushes to his sister's side, finding her in tears as she cries that a maid named Delina won't give her a quill. Kane asks the flustered maid if the quill is something important. He offers to buy a replacement, but Delina explains that the quill was handmade by her son, which only makes Diana cry harder. The situation is clarified. The quill is a precious, personal gift from the maid's own family. Kane uses this as a teachable moment, asking Diana if she would ever give away a treasure he had given her, to which she tearfully shouts, "No," declaring that gifts from her Nisama are treasures. Overwhelmed with affection, Kane internally celebrates his sister's angelic devotion, marveling that she considers his gifts to be treasures. He gently pats her head, calming her down. He explains that just as her treasures from him are precious, the quill is Delina's treasure and cannot be given away. The lesson sinks in, and Diana, full of remorse, offers the maid a heartfelt and tearful apology. Kane praises her for being a good girl and apologizing so properly. He reflects internally on her maturity, proud that even at 4 years old, she can admit when she is wrong. After composing herself, and with a whispered prompt from Kane, Diana approaches the maid again. With tears still in her eyes, she looks up at Delina and asks about her son. She politely asks if Delina's son could please make a quill for her, too, a request that leaves the maid utterly stunned. Diana even offers to pay for it with her own money, further flustering the maid. Delina explains that the feather was something her son just happened to find, but if he could find another, he would of course make one for her. Kane is relieved that he was there to intervene, knowing that if he hadn't been, the maid might have given in, inadvertently teaching Diana a terrible lesson about using her status to take what she wants. Diana, now cheerful, tells her big brother that they should go to the garden to look for feathers to make her new pen. The two siblings walk off together, hand in hand. Kane reflects on his parenting style. It may seem like spoiling, but he makes sure to explain his reasoning when he warns her against certain behaviors, encouraging her to think and act on her own. Ilverino observes them, realizing that the reason Diana is so accepting of him and the other orphans is because Kane treats everyone with natural, unbiased kindness. A montage shows Kane, Diana, and Ilverino happily searching the gardens for the perfect feather. Their search is successful, and they manage to craft a beautiful new quill pen. The three of them admire their handiwork with expressions of wonder and pride. They stand together on a balcony, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. Kane comments on the rare, bright red sunset, and Diana remarks that Ilverino looks as if he might melt into the fiery sky. Kane playfully pinches Ilverino's cheek to ground him. Diana happily exclaims that Ilverino's hair is the same color as the sunset, and Kane adds that his eyes are as beautiful as the setting sun. Diana then compares Kane's eyes to the bright noon sky and her own hair to the noon sun, before spotting a single black feather on the railing. Kane notes that the feather is beautiful but completely black, but Diana says she wants a blue one, the same color as her Nisama's eyes, a comment that stuns Kane. Overcome with love for his sister, Kane pulls her into a tight hug, vowing to protect her with everything he has. Ilverino watches the siblings, thinking of them as having the colors of the daytime sky. He reflects that here, in this place, his own color, the color of the evening, is not the color of blood. He quietly wipes a single tear from his eye. On that day, a definite and profound change occurred on the Ilverino route, a shift that Kane himself did not yet realize. A final page shows a collage of Diana's emotional journey through the incident with the quill. Some time has passed since Ilverino became Kane's attendant, and there has been no contact with any other game characters since then. Kane finds himself in a lesson about the names and meanings of flowers, a necessary study for an heir to a ducal family. The tutor gives an example, explaining that the flower Diligus carries the meaning, "I will end yours and my life," which shocks the children. He clarifies the nuance. For a woman receiving the flower, it is interpreted as a beautiful proposal, meaning, let's be together until death do us part. The tutor presents a hypothetical scenario where he gives the flower to an unknown woman who approaches him, leading her to believe he is proposing marriage. The misunderstanding escalates when his wife finds the flower in their bedroom, believes he is having an affair and planning a double suicide, ultimately leading to the destruction of his family. The tutor then observes that Kane, Diana, and Ilverino are all exceptionally good-looking children. He predicts that they will inevitably grow into very beautiful adults. Because of their beauty, he warns, they are more susceptible to misunderstandings, making it crucial for them to remember the language of flowers to protect themselves. Ilverino asks who created the flower language, and the tutor explains a theory that each flower has a fairy whose nature is expressed through its given meaning, though Cain questions the existence of a fairy with such a dark nature. The tutor offers a second explanation. The person who discovers or creates a new flower species can also assign it a name and meaning, telling Diana she could do so if she found one. Diana excitedly declares that if she ever finds a new flower, she will name it the Cain flower, and give it the meaning, "I love you, big brother." Overcome with joy, Cain thinks he could die happy at that moment, his extreme expression prompting a comment from Ilverino. The story moves on, showing an exterior view of the Elgrindark mansion. Cain asks his mother about the Queen's Embroidery Club, a gathering she attends periodically. His mother announces her plan to take Diana to the palace for the next meeting, confident in her daughter's excellent embroidery skills. Cain immediately asks if the Crown Prince will also be in attendance at the meeting. His question is fueled by the memory of the game's Crown Prince route, in which Diana marries the prince only to be handed over to another nobleman and abused by her stepsons. Snapping out of his grim thoughts, Cain enthusiastically tells his mother that he is also very interested in embroidery and begs to be taken along. A scene shows both Cain and Ilverino sitting down to practice their embroidery. Their mother sets a condition for Cain. If he can successfully complete a specific embroidery design by the deadline, she will allow him to come to the palace. As they begin learning the basic stitches, Ilverino questions why he must learn embroidery as well. Cain explains his belief that mastering the basics makes everything easier in the long run, following the principle of slow and steady wins the race. Ilverino expresses his difficulty in respecting Cain's actions if they are based solely on an imagined future to prevent an engagement between Diana and the Crown Prince. Cain admits he wishes it were just a delusion but argues it's better to be skilled, adding that Ilverino could teach embroidery to the children at the orphanage. He elaborates that this skill would provide the orphans with better job placements, allowing them to become seamstresses with opportunities for promotion instead of just doing odd jobs. Ilverino is visibly moved by Cain's thoughtful consideration for the other children. Cain suggests that a portion of Ilverino's salary could be donated to the orphanage in the form of cloth and embroidery thread. Ilverino explains that the orphanage has debts, so donations are usually prioritized for essentials like food and shelter, leaving little for education. Inspired by Cain's plan, Ilverino declares that he too will start learning embroidery from the basics, earning a smile from Cain. A montage shows the passage of 1 month, with the two boys diligently practicing their new skill week after week. Diana proudly presents her beautifully completed embroidery to her mother, who is quite impressed. Seeing Cain's finished work as well, the mother concedes that she has no choice but to take him to the palace too, much to his delight. The mother gives her final instructions for the next day's trip, telling Ilverino he will stay home and reminding Diana not to leave her side at the royal palace. Cain frantically warns Diana that a diabolically evil prince is waiting at the palace to eat her. His mother immediately scolds him for saying such things, as a horrified Diana reacts to the idea of an evil prince. Cain internally justifies his outburst, believing that any man would lose their reason and turn into a mob in the face of Diana's overwhelming cuteness. The mother reassures Diana, telling her that many children her age will be there, giving her a chance to make new friends. Diana gets excited about playing stone tossing, but her mother gently reminds her they will be indoors and that there is no evil prince, instructing her to greet everyone properly. She encourages Diana to proudly show everyone her beautiful embroidery work. The next day, as their carriage approaches the royal palace, their mother calls out to Cain. She warns him that if he only pays attention to Diana, she will turn the carriage around, reminding him that his stated goal was to master embroidery for Diana's future wedding dress. The mother expresses surprise, asking if he truly wants Diana to get married, as she had assumed he was too doting to ever let her go. Cain firmly declares that he wants Diana to be happier than anyone else and that he will remove any and all obstacles to ensure her happiness. He recalls the game's dynamic, where the villainous Diana invariably became unhappy whenever the heroine fell in love. However, he acknowledges that this is a real world, not a game, and the scenario might not unfold in the same way. There might not even be a heroine at all. He reaffirms his core mission. This time, he will make Diana happy for sure. He then shifts the topic, pointing out that as the eldest son of a duke, his own matchmaking should take precedence over Diana's, which shocks his mother. His mother remarks that his mature way of speaking sometimes makes her forget he is only 7 years old. She wonders if she didn't spoil him enough, causing him to become self-sufficient and pour the affection he missed onto his sister. She asks Cain if he has any preferences for a future wife. Cain smiles and lists his 2 conditions. She must be someone who will love Diana alongside him, and she must not be jealous that Diana will always be his first priority. A confused Diana asks her brother if he is getting a wife. She then innocently offers herself, asking if she can be his wife someday. The camera zooms in on Diana's determined eyes as she asks if she can become her brother's wife. Cain is reduced to a blubbering, emotional mess, prompting his mother to tell him to fix his face and to scold Diana for acting spoiled, reminding her to uphold her brother's dignity at the palace. She sternly tells Diana that if she wants others to see her brother as cool, she shouldn't depend on him so much in public. Both Cain and Diana snap to attention and respond with a loud yes. Meanwhile, the butler Wayne sees Ilverino off with a carriage loaded with souvenirs that the Duchess prepared for the orphanage. An establishing shot shows the magnificent royal palace under a clear sky. A palace attendant greets the family and informs them that the Queen is waiting for them in the salon. The Queen warmly welcomes Elise and expresses her excitement to finally meet Cain and Diana. Diana attempts a formal greeting but stumbles over her words, causing her mother to sigh in exasperation. Cain looks around the grand salon, his expression hardening as he realizes with dread that somewhere in this very place, the crown prince is waiting. A woman observes a pair of small children offering greetings, a gentle laugh escaping her as she finds their formality cute. The boy, Cain, watches her and internally notes that she seems to be a kind person. His thoughts then shift to her son, the crown prince, remembering the boy's future fate of handing his own fiancée over to another man. A woman's voice calls out to the young girl, Diana, beckoning her to come and play with the other children. Cain feels a hand gently guiding him away from the formal gathering. He is led to a room where a group of young aristocrats are seated around a large table, seemingly for a shared lesson or social event. One of the girls at the table admits to the others that she had been conceited, always confident she would excel at anything she attempted due to her strategic mind, which impresses her peers. Later, during playtime, the crown prince is seen near a tower of blocks which tumbles over in Diana's direction. Diana cries out as she falls to the floor, the toy blocks scattering around her. Cain immediately rushes to his sister's side, asking if she is all right as another girl calls his name in alarm. Diana affirms that she is fine. A trickle of blood appears on her hand, revealing a fresh scrape from the fall. An older girl tries to reassure Cain that it is merely a scratch and will be healed quickly by a standby healer, but something inside him snaps at the sight. His attention fixes on the crown prince, who looks back with surprise and demands to know what he wants, while Cain's mother observes, thinking the issue is minor since it can be healed. Cain is horrified by this line of thinking, realizing that the prince will face no consequences for injuring Diana. A dark, swirling energy erupts from Cain, aimed directly at the crown prince who stands unaware. All the adults in the room, including the queen, look on in shock at the sudden display of power. An urgent voice cries out a warning that magic is not to be used in a fight. Cain's mother restrains him as he shouts that the act was unforgivable, declaring that women must be valued and that girls are fragile beings. He continues his passionate outburst, comparing the delicacy of girls to fleeting things like bubbles, snowflakes, and rosettes made of thin glass. Another lady interjects, telling Cain that he shouldn't hurt the prince and must apologize, but Cain adamantly refuses, insisting the prince must apologize to Diana first while the queen watches with an expectant expression. The lady argues back, stating that as the crown prince, he should not have to bow his head to anyone. A different woman claps her hands together to get everyone's attention, deciding it is best to end the gathering for the day. The queen then addresses the room, apologizing for cutting the party short and promising to host another tea party at a later date to make amends. The scene shifts to an establishing view of a grand estate under a daytime sky. Inside, Cain's mother reminds him that she had told him Diana's injury would be healed without any issue. Cain looks down, his expression troubled, and asks his mother to disinherit him should the royal family demand repercussions. She reassures him that the queen is a kind person and that since only acquaintances were present, a punishment that harsh is unlikely. She then questions his intense hatred for the crown prince, whom he has only just met, and Cain reveals his plans for Diana to take over the household after he marries into royalty have now been complicated. He states simply that he just loves Diana, prompting his mother to observe that he shows no remorse for his actions. She looks at him with sharp eyes, telling him that he must learn how to control his emotions. Her lecture concludes with the blunt statement that he behaved terribly whenever Diana was involved. Left alone, Kane sits on a sofa, staring at his own hands before looking out at the grand estate. His thoughts drift to a simple desire to just play games. A memory from a past life surfaces, showing a modern young man enjoying a computer game before riding a public train. He recalls his original plan in this new life, to recreate the games from his old world, as inventing modern technology was beyond him, treating the acquisition of new skills as a form of leveling up. He muses on the difference between his two lives. In his past, a game could evoke powerful emotions, but now, in reality, there is no way to simply reload and try again after a failure. His hands come into focus, small and still forming. Back in the present, Kane whispers his wish aloud, wanting to play a game. Unseen, his father stands outside the room, wondering how he missed his quiet and capable son learning magic and feeling a pang of guilt for possibly neglecting him. His wife approaches, informing him that Kane needs a scolding as he has not reflected on his behavior, and after receiving no reply from the room, the father decides to go in. Kane remains seated on the sofa, his expression withdrawn and somber. The door opens and his father enters, walking over and pulling the surprised boy into a firm embrace. Holding his son, he remarks with a soft tone that Kane has gotten heavy. He gently pats Kane's back while explaining the real danger of using fire magic in a fight, warning that it could have severely burned or even killed his opponent. Kane listens in silence, his face pressed against his father's shoulder. His father continues, pointing out that Kane would have been in serious legal trouble if his mother hadn't intervened, reminding the boy of his own profession in law and his desire not to judge his own son's crime. He then asks if Kane's actions stemmed from a desire to prevent Diana from becoming the prince's fiancée, presenting a scenario where the prince might offer to marry Diana to take responsibility, which causes Kane to cry out in denial. The father's eyes hold a serious and steady gaze as he watches his son's reaction. He clarifies a misunderstanding, explaining that the royal family is wary of their ducal family's power, making it unlikely Diana would be chosen as the prince's fiancée despite being a candidate. He tells Kane that while the situation could have been handled better, he wants to prevent such a sad scenario from happening again and promises that as his father, he will not lie for him or cover up any laws he breaks. Kane looks up at him, the weight of his father's words sinking in. The narrative transitions to an outside view of the ducal mansion once more. Some time later, a tutor reports to the father with a look of disbelief, stating that Kane has already completed the entire third-year curriculum of the Unlimited Magic Academy. The father is stunned by the news, processing the fact that his 7-year-old son is performing at the level of a 14-year-old. A montage of Kane's tutors flashes by, each praising his exceptional talent in their respective fields, knighthood, music, and magic, while all noting that his perfection is only disrupted when Diana becomes involved. Even his art instructor, a painter named Celsius, remarks that while his coloring needs work, his drawing skill is more than enough for an aristocrat's taste. A letter bearing the Queen's wax seal arrives, and the father learns that instead of blame, she has offered to arrange a meeting for reconciliation. The realization slowly dawns that the person who needs to make up with the crown prince is not Diana. It becomes clear that the Queen's true interest lies not with Diana, but with the prodigy, Kane. In a sitting room, Diana is told that her brother is on probation and that she should not visit his room for a while, a request she cheerfully accepts. Her smile remains, but a hint of uncertainty flickers in her eyes. She innocently asks her parents if a while means she can see him tomorrow, still not grasping the situation's gravity. The reality of the separation finally sinks in, and Diana sits alone, a dark and troubled expression clouding her face. Elsewhere, two maids gossip, noting that a week has passed with Lord Kane doing nothing, which is unheard of for a boy who is always either studying or caring for his sister. A young attendant, Velkuin, watches Kane's room from afar, sensing that his master is blocked off and enduring some silent struggle. Diana suddenly appears before him, calling out his name as she approaches with determination. She marches up to a door and demands that Velkuin open it, surprising him with her sudden appearance and request. When he asks what she is doing, she says she just wants a sneak peek, leaving him to wonder how she even knew about the room next to his. Peeking through the door, they see Kane huddled on a sofa, his meal left untouched on a nearby table. Velkuin recalls hearing that Kane hasn't eaten or done anything since an incident where he crashed an embroidery club at the palace and was disciplined by an Elisama, a punishment seemingly too minor to cause such a reaction. Diana looks on with deep concern, while Alcuin tries to make sense of his master's strange behavior. Suddenly, Diana declares her intention to cheer up her brother, apologizing for the bother before turning to leave. She dashes away with purpose, running down a grand staircase to put her plan into action. Her small figure hurries along the corridors of the large mansion. As she runs down the stairs, Alcuin calls out in alarm, warning her to be careful not to fall and noting with embarrassment that her undergarments are exposed. In the garden, Diana ignores a maid's pleas to fix her skirt and instead asks a gardener if he knows of a flower that has no name. She wanders through the well-manicured grounds, searching for something specific. Her face lights up with a joyful cry as she finds what she was looking for: a simple, wild-looking flower growing by itself. Later, in Kane's darkened bedroom, a hand places a vase with a single flower on his bedside table. Alcuin announces he has brought a gift from Diana-sama, and Kane stirs from under his covers, recognizing the common wheat flower. The attendant explains that because the estate's garden is so perfectly maintained, Diana had likely never seen such a flower before. He delivers Diana's message to get well soon, and asks Kane how long he plans to laze about, adding that she named the plant a cane flower and decided its meaning was, "I love you, big brother." Kane is visibly moved, a pained expression crossing his face as he processes his sister's heartfelt gesture. He sits up in bed, his mind filled with a single thought. He wants to protect Diana. He reflects on his goal to cherish and save her, but now feels uncertain if his current path of isolation is truly connected to securing that future. Alcuin speaks up, telling Kane that regardless of the future, Diana is happy right now, and though he doesn't understand Kane's worries, he wants to help. He offers his assistance in whatever Kane is trying to accomplish. He confesses that he also feels attached to the adorable Diana and doesn't want to see her become unhappy, asking Kane to share his worries. Kane listens to the boy's earnest plea, his expression thoughtful and serious. With a flash of irritation, Alcuin shoves a piece of bread into Kane's mouth, bluntly telling him to eat. He insists that Kane shouldn't stay alone and hungry, offering to lend his strength if Kane lacks his own. The words strike Kane with the force of a physical blow, as he recognizes the line as being shockingly similar to a scene from the game. He recalls the Il Verino route, where the character promises to face fear together with the protagonist, but devolves into an assassin who eliminates any perceived threat. Kane remembers the tragic conclusion of that route. The only way to protect Il Verino from his own madness was to kill him. A new understanding dawns on him. Il Verino doesn't want to be saved, but to fight alongside him, and Kane realizes his efforts are actually working. A memory of the game's happy ending flashes in his mind, with the protagonist standing beside a smiling Diana and a healthy Il Verino. The grim tension in Kane's face melts away into a wide, relieved smile as he realizes the outcome is turning out fine. Overcome with emotion, he throws his arms around the startled Alcuin, feeling for the first time that he has successfully averted a terrible future. The scene shifts to a grand castle, where preparations are underway. A servant addresses Kane by a formal name, Arundarano, as they get him ready. A tea party has been arranged as a place for reconciliation between the children. At the party, the crown prince approaches Diana and apologizes for pushing her, but she smiles brightly and tells him to forget about it. He then asks with genuine concern if her hand, which was hurt in the fall, is okay now. As the prince speaks with Diana, Kane approaches him from the side. Kane bows low, apologizing for frightening the prince and vowing that he is willing to accept Diana's engagement if it will make her happy. He remains bowed, realizing with a start that he can't be a brother who causes his sister sadness. As the prince and the queen watch, Kane mentally flounders, having forgotten how he was supposed to respond in this formal situation. He finally raises his head, a bright smile on his face as he sincerely asks the prince to accept his apology, which the flustered prince does. The two mothers, Kane's mother and the queen, watch the exchange with warm, knowing smiles. With the apologies accepted, the queen declares that they should all have some tea now that they have made up. After tea, Kane suggests a walk in the garden and offers his hand to the crown prince, who agrees. The crown prince smiles gently as he accepts Kane's offered hand. While they walk, Kane asks if the prince is afraid of him, reminding him that he tried to attack him with fire, but the prince says the apology was enough. The prince admits he was surprised by the magic but also found it beautiful, asking Kane to show him again someday, which delights Diana. Diana proudly declares she has also started practicing magic, hoping to be as amazing as Kane one day, and Kane encourages the prince by reminding him of his family's strong magical lineage. The prince looks out over the garden, a thoughtful expression on his face as he quietly wonders if he'll ever be able to use magic like that. He then explains that during the incident, he had simply wanted to show Diana the castle he had built from blocks and had called for her to look. This sparks a childish argument between Diana and the prince over what was said and whose voice was too quiet or too loud. Cain steps between them with a laugh, placing his hands on their shoulders and telling them both to calm down. He advises Diana to look at people when she replies to them so she knows who she is speaking to. He then pats her head, thinking to himself that she truly is the best sister in the world as she beams and promises to do so. He turns to the prince and offers the same advice, suggesting he call people by name or look them in the face, especially given his royal status. Cain then makes the prince give his absolute promise on one thing, that he will never again be violent with a girl. The prince looks shocked and asks what he should do if a girl is mean or even hits him first, insisting that he must be allowed to respond. Cain calmly explains that a capable man doesn't get into those situations. He acts in a way that won't get him beaten and elegantly avoids conflict. He kneels before the prince and tells him that no girl is malicious from the start, and that as a prince, it is his duty to identify and remove the cause of such unhappiness. He then asks him to try and be a kind prince, though he privately thinks that some people are indeed malicious from the start, but sees no need to say it here. The crown prince looks at Cain with newfound understanding and promises that he will be a kind prince. Diana rushes forward and pats the prince's head, praising him as a good boy for his promise. Cain joins in, also patting the prince's head with a warm smile and agreeing that he is a good boy. Later, the queen relaxes on a bench and remarks how fun the day was, feeling like a carefree chat from her days at the Magic Academy. The prince asks if he can call Cain Anizima, and invites him to visit his home next time. As Cain and Diana prepare to leave, the prince thanks them for a fun day and urges them to visit again, promising there are many toys to play with. Diana waves a cheerful goodbye, and Cain adds that he hopes they can meet again if there's a chance. The carriage departs from the royal estate under a clear sky. Back in Cain's room, he and Alcuin discuss the day's events. Alcuin questions Cain, recalling that his original plan was to beat up the crown prince, not make up with him. Cain explains that his goal was to portray the strong impression that the prince could never defeat him, prompting Alcuin to ask why he didn't follow through. A memory of the prince's happy, smiling face from the garden flashes in Cain's mind. Cain reflects on his previous life as a salesman for an educational toy company, a job which taught him that children play, learn, and grow in ways that often exceed adult imagination. He realizes that Diana, Ilverino, and the prince are not yet the tragic figures from the game. They are not yet a villainous or a mentally ill assassin. He thinks back on the advice he gave the prince, don't respond to nastiness with nastiness, and admits to himself that it's not something he could have said while he was still focused on revenge. Alcuin dismisses the phrase as just a nice-sounding platitude. Cain lies back on his bed with a smile, thinking that the prince was actually quite cute and that children are, after all, a bundle of possibilities. Cain's father notes that he's heard Cain is learning sword fighting from the mansion's knights and asks if he'd like to pursue swordplay more seriously. Cain enthusiastically accepts the offer, asking if this means he'll get a private tutor, which surprises his father, who notes Cain's prior lack of interest in his studies. The scene shifts to a large, fortified city nestled among mountains. Within the city walls lie the Royal Guard training grounds, a sprawling complex where knights are drilled. The crown prince, dressed for training, greets Cain with excitement, but Cain looks less than thrilled to see him. Cain learns that his presence at the training grounds was a direct request from the crown prince himself. A trainer instructs the boys to begin with running and practice swings to build their fundamentals. Cain struggles with the weight and balance of the practice sword during his swings. The trainer observes Cain's form with surprise, asking if someone has taught him how to use a sword before. Cain explains that he learned by watching the knights from his family's territory, prompting the trainer to note that their style is practical, suited for monster extermination and border patrols. The trainer then describes the Royal Guard style as more compact and linear for urban combat and protecting VIPs, suggesting Cain learned this standard form as practice. An instructor's voice echoes across the training grounds, announcing the conclusion of the morning session as the trainees shout in response. As they leave, the trainer invites Cain to join their practice anytime, but Cain realizes he still hasn't been told the man's name. The man introduces himself as Fabian Velfadia, the vice-captain of the Royal Guard, a name that sends a jolt of shock through Cain as he recognizes him as the father of a character from the game's Holy Night route. Later, Cain finds himself seated at an outdoor table set for a meal. The Crown Prince happily gives thanks for his bread while Kane wonders why he has to stay and have lunch with him. The prince praises Kane's running ability and calls him Kane Ani-sama, an affectionate term for an older brother, which Kane quickly tells him to stop using. Kane asks the prince if he was planning to eat lunch by himself, and the prince looks downcast. The prince confirms that his parents are both very busy, but his mood brightens as he recalls how much fun it was to eat with Kane and Diana the other day. He admits that he only gets to have dinner with his mother when there are visitors, making those occasions a source of happiness for him. Kane realizes that this lonely routine is what every day is like for the prince. He tries to excuse himself from future lunches by claiming he can't go to the castle for training, but his father intercepts the message. His father tells him that since he has already progressed to a third-year Magic Academy level, slowing his pace would be good, dismissing Kane's concern that his other studies will be delayed. Kane's mind drifts to the Holy Night route, a story he could learn more about from the Vice Commander. He remembers the grim details of that route, where the Demon King's soul possesses Diana, leading to her death at the hands of an apprentice knight and the heroine. This memory solidifies his resolve. He wants to gain the strength to fight and defeat the Demon King himself. The new schedule distresses him, as training in the morning means he won't be able to have lunch with Diana during her class breaks. He worries that if he doesn't see her, she might forget about him, and he becomes determined to find a solution. During Diana's arithmetic lesson, her tutor praises her for being able to add and subtract numbers up to 10 without using her fingers. Kane watches, internally fuming that this praise comes from the same tutor who was complimenting the prince, and he laments missing Diana's smug face of accomplishment. In their magic lesson, Professor Tilnoa announces that Aelkuin will also be studying magic from now on, and everyone resolves to do their best. The professor reveals that Aelkuin has a talent for healing magic, though it's currently weak and can only mend small wounds. Having mastered fire, wind, and water, Kane is asked what he wants to learn next, with the professor suggesting composite magics like explosion or freezing types. She then enthusiastically recommends earth magic, explaining that combining it with wind could allow for teleportation, much to Aelkuin's nerdy delight. Professor Tilnoa expresses her pure joy at being able to teach a new child and witness the moment magic awakens within them. She fondly complains that while she was initially overjoyed to teach Kane, his method of simply reading a book and memorizing everything was quite boring for her. Turning her attention back to Aelkuin, she instructs him to begin by feeling the flow of mana, while Kane's mind fixates on one word: teleportation. He realizes teleportation is a magic that never appeared in the game, and the possibility excites him. With such an ability, he could always return to Diana's side. The scene cuts back to the training yard, where Kane and the prince are sparring with wooden swords. The prince observes Kane, noting that he sometimes shouts out loud for no apparent reason during their training. He internally wonders if Kane is going through puberty, as he's heard this can make boys think about women. Kane suddenly lets out a loud shout, startling the prince, who has no idea what he is talking about. The prince internally scoffs, thinking that shouting to attract attention when trying to act cool is pathetic. A flashback shows Diana pricking her finger with an embroidery needle, and Aelkuin healing it with magic, earning him her wide-eyed praise and admiration. Back in the present, Kane complains that Aelkuin's moment was unfair, wishing he could be the one to heal Diana's injuries and receive her praise, but he was stuck trying to make the prince eat tomatoes. Kane feels a desperate deficiency, a lack of what he calls Diana, in his life. He wanders the study, trying to figure out how to replenish his Diananium, when a brilliant idea finally strikes him. He drafts a proposal suggesting that siblings with a minimal age difference be allowed to attend classes together, knowing his father often leaves mansion affairs to the butler. He presents the document to his father, who promptly stamps it with his seal of approval. Kane arrives at music class with his instrument, overjoyed that he and Diana can now make music together. Diana, however, just puffs her cheeks and glares at him with a pout. She declares that she doesn't want to play with him because people say she sucks, in comparison, a statement that shatters Kane's happy mood and brings tears to his eyes. Kane whirls around to confront the music tutor, angrily demanding to know if he told Diana she was terrible, which the tutor frantically denies. As Diana bursts into tears, Kane rushes to her side to ask what's wrong. Later, Hakun explains the situation to Kane. It seems the tutors never called her terrible directly, but they frequently made statements comparing her to her prodigious brother. A montage of lessons shows various tutors praising Diana's unique talents, like her good sense of color, while simultaneously highlighting how different she is from Kane, creating an unintentional but constant comparison. Aelkuin explains that these comments have piled up over time, causing Diana to develop a deep-seated feeling of inferiority to Cain. Cain understands that the tutors had no bad intentions. After becoming accustomed to his advanced abilities, they simply reverted to their standard for a normal child when teaching Diana. He clenches his fist in frustration, thinking that the adults are pointless and their careless words are hurting his sister. His mind drifts back to the game's central theme, a story about healing the darkness and emotional gaps in a man's heart, and he wonders about the source of that darkness. He worries that the current environment, where his and the prince's parents love them but are uninvolved in their education, is planting the very seeds of darkness the game sought to address. He collapses onto his desk with a sigh, overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation and wondering what he should do next. A carriage arrives at the mansion, and Cain's mother greets a woman named Elise, welcoming her and thanking her for the invitation. The children, including Cain, Prince Al, and Diana, watch as the guests arrive. Elise mentions bringing an unusual snack from another country for the girls to share, while Cain pulls Prince Al aside, suggesting they have a man-to-man conversation in his room. Inside Cain's room, away from the others, he begins his talk with Prince Al. He directly asks the prince how he met a certain woman, causing the young royal to blush and look flustered. Cain privately hopes that if he can help the prince's first love come true, he might be able to prevent the future engagement between the prince and his sister, Diana. The prince recounts a time when he was rushing to see his father and fell hard on the castle floor. He recalls looking up into the eyes of the woman who found him. She had told him not to cry and that he couldn't see the exhausted king right away, but she also praised him for being impressive and standing up on his own. He confesses to Cain that he wants to do his best with the sword so that she will praise him again for being a strong boy. Cain realizes the prince isn't experiencing romantic feelings but is instead seeking parental love, so he suggests they go find the queen and his mother. The prince refuses, saying he doesn't want to bother his mother while she's enjoying her time chatting with the other ladies. Cain passionately tells the prince that it's not good to simply hold his feelings in and that he should throw away the idea that things will just work out if he endures them. He urges the prince not to make excuses, telling him that if he wants to be with his mother without getting in her way, he needs to come up with a plan. He reminds the boy that because he is a prince, there might be official duties he can perform alongside his mother. Cain then turns and calls for Ilverino, instructing him to fetch the royal family's schedule from the butler. Looking over the documents, Cain sees that the royal family's diplomatic and entertainment schedules are widely publicized, and he groans at how busy they seem. He spots an entry for a royal visit to an orphanage and a public learning facility, and an idea begins to form. The scene transitions to an establishing shot of the royal castle, perched atop a mountain. The prince later tells Cain that he followed his advice, explaining to his mother that he was interested in the lives of the commoners, and though she had a sour look, she allowed him to accompany her. During sword training, Cain leans in and whispers a plan to the prince. They will sneak out of the castle after lunch for his first official duty. He reveals his knowledge of a secret passage located within the castle garden. The prince is amazed by the hidden passage and wonders how Cain knows about it, while Cain suggests they use it to go look at the stars together. Cain keeps to himself the real reason he knows the secret. The prince had taught it to him in the game. To further impress the prince, Cain uses compound magic to create a small, sparkling light, which the prince correctly identifies as a compound spell. The prince's excitement fades as he laments that he is no good, possessing only wind magic. Cain realizes that the prince is not used to being praised, unlike most toddlers who are celebrated for the smallest of achievements. As they head towards the secret passage, they are intercepted by Vice Captain Fabian, who asks where they plan on taking His Highness. A carriage quickly departs from the castle grounds. Inside, Fabian chides Cain, stating that if he wanted to hang out with the prince, he should have asked for permission, while Cain thinks that he couldn't just give orders to the vice captain on the spot. They arrive at their destination, the orphanage in the Western Temple. Upon arrival, Cain instructs Prince Al to take off his fine clothes, a command that confuses both the prince and Fabian. Cain insists, and after they change into simpler attire, he playfully pushes the prince onto the ground, getting them both dirty. The prince cries out in surprise as he tumbles, his clean clothes now smudged with dirt. Cain helps him up with a smile, and the two boys, now looking disheveled, prepare to enter the orphanage. Inside, the orphan children greet Cain and Ilverino warmly, and Cain introduces the prince as Alsama, telling them to be respectful of his higher position. The children cheerfully greet Alsama, who looks shy and overwhelmed by the attention. Cain leans in and whispers to the prince, asking if he's glad he got dirty now. He then asks the group what they should play, and the prince, unfamiliar with the concept, asks what play even means. The prince is shown holding hands and playing with the other children, fully engaged in their games. He waves goodbye with a bright, joyful smile, though his expression turns sad as he has to leave his new friends. As they depart, Cain points out a boy with a broom, identifying him as Serenasta. A close-up shows that Serenasta's leg is heavily bandaged. Cain tells Ilverino that he will tell him something important when they get back to the manor. The scene shifts to the city skyline as they travel home. Inside the carriage, Cain lectures Ilverino, stating that aristocrats who live off taxes have a duty to protect the common people. He argues that the existence of children who struggle for food and clothing is a direct result of the nobility's lack of power or will. Fabian pushes back, telling Cain that he is exaggerating and that the orphanages exist precisely because the king's majesty reaches the people. Cain glares at Fabian, clearly disagreeing, while the prince watches the tense exchange. The prince, however, is still giddy from his trip, excitedly telling a maid that he wants a strong stone and that he wanted to win at musical chairs. Cain suggests that the prince tell the queen's guests about the games he played, predicting that they will be happy to hear about it. Fabian asks if those are games that common children play, and the prince wonders if he is the one being asked. Cain confirms that they are, explaining that he taught the orphans everything except stone throwing and that such games are a convenient way to make friends with many people at once. Fabian looks on with a skeptical expression, while the prince seems amazed by the idea. The narrative moves back to the ducal estate. Ilverino reports to Cain about Serenasta, explaining that the boy is a dexterous blacksmith's apprentice. He recounts how Serenasta found a key to an old toolbox, opened it, and became famous for his ability to open locked boxes. His fame grew and more safes were brought to him, all of which he opened, but his luck turned when his leg was run over by a carriage. Ilverino continues, stating that Serenasta was sent back to the orphanage and that a new scout will be coming to take him away the day after tomorrow. A dark image of hooded figures appears as Ilverino mentions them. Cain immediately realizes these are the people who used Ilverino as an assassin in the game, and Ilverino grimly concludes that because of him, they discovered that children are easy to handle. Cain orders Ilverino to take him to their hideout, but for the first time, Ilverino refuses, stating that he doesn't like it. Ilverino agrees to guide Cain to the hideout, suggesting they take a horse-drawn carriage for the journey. The city streets are visible as they make their way to their destination. Cain and Ilverino walk through the bustling streets, blending in with the crowd. They board a large, covered public carriage, taking their seats among the other passengers. A hooded figure beside them speaks, revealing himself to be Prince Al and asking if Cain was aware they were being followed. Cain and Ilverino are shocked by his sudden appearance, demanding to know why he is there, while Ilverino questions if there's any reason for Cain to be nervous with him around. The prince insists that he has come too far on his own to be sent away now, stating that there is not enough time to turn back. Ilverino tells Cain that it's all right for him to return home, admitting that he never wanted to take his master with him in the first place. Cain argues that he didn't ask for help, but Ilverino says he just wants Cain to listen to his story. Prince Al interrupts their tense conversation with a cheerful smile, remarking on what good friends they are and asking to be taken along to play. Cain sighs in exasperation and asks how the prince managed to escape the castle, to which Al replies that he used the loophole Cain had told him about. To protect the prince's identity, Cain instructs Ilverino not to use any formal titles and to simply call him Al. The three boys disembark from the carriage and walk through a less reputable part of the city, arriving at their destination. As they prepare to enter a warehouse, Cain asks Al what magic he can use. The prince proudly states that he has learned Wind Blade and Wind Shield. Cain tells the prince to hide inside a cellar, explaining that there are bad guys outside that they are going to get rid of. He declares that before the criminals can take Serenasta, he will ensure they can never harm children again. He gives Al one final instruction. If something dangerous happens, he must use his wind magic for protection. Cain promises that when they get back, he will properly invite Al to play, reassuring him that he will be fine if he just uses his magic as he learned. The two boys approach the hideout, and Cain decides he wants to scout the inside without causing a fuss yet. Ilverino offers to create a diversion by approaching the guard and asking to work for them again, getting the man's attention. The guard leads Ilverino inside, and Cain uses the opportunity to slip in unnoticed, his expression hardening with resolve. Hiding among crates and junk, Cain discovers Prince Al has followed him into the warehouse. Cain observes a mountain of stolen goods and realizes the criminals, who specialize in robbery and assassination, need Serenasta's keysmithing skills for their operations. Inside, Ilverino stands before a group of men as their leader asks if he truly wants to come back. The leader mocks Ilverino, questioning why he would leave his good life at a nobleman's mansion, to which Ilverino replies that it wasn't very good. The man scoffs, claiming he lost a lot because of Ilverino and now demands double that amount as compensation. He suggests Ilverino could simply steal something valuable from the mansion to pay him back, which would prevent other orphans from getting involved. Ilverino thinks about the kindness he was shown at the mansion and how Cain helped him, admitting that even though he doesn't want to put his master in danger, he has asked for his help. The leader gives Ilverino an ultimatum. If he truly wants to return, he must prove his loyalty by killing his current master. With a determined cry, Ilverino lunges forward with a dagger, aiming it not at Cain but at the criminal leader. He is thrown back by the much larger man before he can land a blow. The leader, realizing Ilverino was serious, shouts for his men to kill him, while Cain watches in shock from the rafters. Cain leaps into action, unleashing a powerful spell called Extreme Inferno. A massive explosion of fire erupts from the hideout, visible even from a distance. Inside, the criminals panic as the intense heat begins to melt the very stone around them. Cain appears in the inferno, stating that he doesn't like being used by others. He looks fiercely at the criminals and declares that Ilverino is his chamberlain. Prince Al runs out from his hiding spot and casts Wind of Protection to help contain the blaze as the criminals demand to know who the kids are. Cain instructs Al to maintain his spell and not to dispel his magic. He then casts another spell, Flooding Torrent, summoning a massive wave of water. The torrent crashes through the hideout, extinguishing the flames and washing away the criminals in a powerful rush that is seen from the castle towers. The water swirls violently, carrying debris and bodies with it. Cain stands with Ilverino and a sleeping Al, telling them it is time to go home. The sky is calm after the storm of magic has passed. Later, Cain receives a report that they were unable to contact Serenasta's supposed new workplace, so he will remain at the orphanage for a while longer. He explains the nature of explosions to Ilverino, mentioning dust explosions and steam explosions as things hobbyists should know. He clarifies that the event at the hideout was a steam explosion, though Ilverino seems uninterested. Ilverino asks if it wasn't Cain's magic, noting that even the most powerful explosive spells aren't that spectacular. Cain explains that while his magic prepared the scene by using fire and water, the resulting explosion was a natural phenomenon. He is confident that they won't be implicated, as the scale of the explosion was far beyond what his magic alone could cause, which will lead investigators down the wrong path. He smiles, satisfied that the criminals' hideout is destroyed and that children will no longer be targeted by them. Ilverino notes that Cain's complexion is a bit off and suggests he rest until Diana finishes her lessons. He then expresses his guilt, feeling that he made Cain kill someone even though he had wished for his help. Ilverino blames himself, thinking none of this would have happened if he hadn't come to the mansion. Cain places a gentle hand on Ilverino's head. He reassures the boy, saying he's glad he picked him up and needs him to continue as his servant, especially to help with Diana's hair while he's away. He tells Ilverino not to make such a sad face, declaring that he has no regrets about what happened. At that moment, Diana appears at the doorway, calling out for her Oni-sama. She announces that she has learned the lady's greeting and wants to show everyone, performing a perfect curtsy. With a flourish of her dress, she wishes Cain a good day, her eyes sparkling. Cain responds with an equally elaborate and heartfelt greeting, declaring himself overwhelmed with gratitude and happiness, which makes Diana giggle. She laughs at his formal reply. The two siblings share a moment of pure joy, laughing and embracing each other. Cain then presents Diana with a gift, a beautiful hairpin shaped like a winged rabbit, which he had Serenasta make for her. Delighted, Diana exclaims that it's pretty and runs off to show their parents. The discipline officer, Silas, wryly advises Cain to at least wait until Diana is out of sight before basking in the afterglow of her cuteness. Cain is shown kneeling, his face buried in his hands, completely overcome with affection for his sister. Diana shows the hairpin to her mother and Elise, who both praise how cute it is. Her mother asks who gave it to her and who could have made such a lovely item. The scene shifts to Serenasta, who is now working at a new place. Cain narrates that his mother introduced Serenasta to an accessory workshop favored by aristocrats, where he now works as a live-in employee. At an orphanage, the staff and children line up to formally welcome Her Majesty the Queen and the Crown Prince. The young Crown Prince, Al, steps forward and says hello. One of the children recognizes him, calling him by his formal name, Alandarano-sama. The prince asks the children to tell him their names and then to show him around the orphanage. The orphans look at him with blushing, starstruck expressions. Word of the prince's visit spreads, with people recounting how he kindly spoke to the orphans, held their hands, suggested new games, and even invited children from the town to join them. In a carriage afterwards, a happy Prince Al tells his mother, the queen, that he had a lot of fun and was able to talk with her a great deal. The scene shifts to the ducal manor. A royal official presents a list of royal events scheduled over the next few months. He asks if there are any events that would be good for the crown prince to attend, directing the question specifically to Cain. A lady of the court then speaks to Cain's mother, mentioning that she heard Cain took the prince to the orphanage and that she would like Cain's opinion on future events and any required pre-training. The official adds that because the prince was accustomed to the appearance of the children at the orphanage, he was able to respond calmly. Cain is internally shocked by the condescending choice of words. The official continues, saying that thanks to Cain's advice, the royal family's reputation among the people has improved immensely, but Cain vows to himself that he will not let his anger show. He thinks to himself that he doesn't care about their reputation. He only acted because the prince's distorted view of love could affect Diana's future. The lady of the court states that it would be a great honor for their family if Cain could contribute to the royal family. The official gives Cain a deadline, stating that the king will have an audience with him in 3 days and that he should select an event by then. Cain's face is a mask of pure shock at the announcement. His mind reels as he wonders if he wants to resign from this new responsibility. Later, Cain's father finds him and asks if his true intention was really to improve the royal family's reputation. Cain answers honestly, saying that Prince Al just wanted to spend some time with his parents. He reveals that he made a similar proposal to his own father about spending more time together when traveling to the castle, and it has led to them having more conversations. With a sparkling, genuine smile, he thanks his father for it. His father tells him that if he doesn't want to do it, he will decline the offer on his behalf, but he strongly encourages Cain to at least have the audience with the king. After Cain leaves, his father breaks down, crying out that Cain's talent is so immense it makes him scared. He tells his son that while he is happy he can do anything and is growing so quickly, it is also a source of fear for him. He asks what Cain's dream for the future is, suggesting he could join the Magician Corps, the Knight's Order, or become a civil servant. He tells Cain to keep his flashy face, which he inherited from both his parents. He encourages his son to do something flashy, reminding him that as a child, his dreams are limitless and everyone is already praising him. Cain looks at his passionate father with a slightly nervous expression. After a pause, he declares that he wants to become an adventurer. His father instantly denies the request, sternly reminding Cain that as the eldest son of a duke, he must choose a more suitable path. 3 days later, Cain arrives at the royal palace for his audience. He meets the king, Heinz el Grandis. The king greets him warmly, expressing his thrill that they have finally met. As they sit down for tea, Cain observes that the king looks exactly like a painting he has seen in his own mansion. The queen happily recounts Prince Al's admirable behavior during the orphanage visit, while a poison tester ensures the food is safe. The king is eager to hear stories about his son and asks how the sword training is going, having heard it's a solid match despite the difference in physique. The king asks if Cain is adjusting his skill for the prince, as even the knights have praised Al's excellence. Cain denies it, explaining that his highness has a good core, and recounts how the prince recently scored a point with a feint. The king questions this, assuming his son would lose in a head-to-head competition. The queen remarks that Cain and Al must be having secret conversations about love during lunch, and the king asks Cain to secretly tell him who the person is, but Cain bluntly states that he just forced Al to eat his tomatoes. The royal couple laugh, sensing that something is not quite right with that story. That night, Cain is restless in his bed. He suddenly sits up with a scream, jolted awake by a nightmare. The curtains to his bed are thrown open by Ilverino. Ilverino, still in his nightclothes, says he could hear Cain screaming even in his room and asks if he's still half asleep. Cain, now fully awake, tells Ilverino to wait, as he'd like to hear his opinion on something. Ilverino is already sleepy and says Cain can talk while he dozes off, but Cain insists he not fall asleep on the spot. Cain explains his dream. The king and queen spoke about events as if they were there, even the smallest details. He first thought Al told them, but it felt off. He tells Ilverino that this is the source of his discomfort, as they knew even the smallest, unexplainable details. Ilverino asks if they were alone during sword training or lunch, questioning the presence of maids, waiters, or guards. Cain confirms that there were always people watching nearby. Ilverino explains that even Kane and Diana are frequently watched by staff in their own mansion. He warns Kane that if he thinks he's alone and isn't careful, he will definitely be scolded later, which surprises Kane. The scene shifts to the Crown Prince, who explains that everyone in the castle is a spy and that there are Prince observation reports. He elaborates that even a passing encounter or a single line of dialogue would be submitted in a report, collected every 5 minutes to document his entire day. Kane realizes that with so many reports, the king and queen must have someone summarize them, and he questions whether reading a summary truly constitutes watching over their son, who so desperately wants their love. Ilverino adds that he is also required to report on Diana's condition, which sends Kane into a fury, as he pampers her so much a report is unnecessary. Ilverino mentions that Prince Ael's nanny is the mother of Fabian, the vice-commander of the knights. This nanny would sometimes bring playmates for the lonely prince, her own grandchildren, Chris and Grant Velfadia. A flashback shows the prince playing on a swing with the Velfadia brothers. The brothers talk about how they do everything together, like catching fish and reading books. The prince sadly wishes he had a big brother too, and Chris tells him that while he can't have an older brother, he could become one himself. The image of the sleeping prince whispering, "I'm lonely," triggers a shocking realization in Kane. He remembers the details of another incident. Kane recalls a memory of the prince looking downcast. The prince had confessed to his nanny that he was envious when Kane got angry on Diana's behalf after the prince made her fall. He had told her that he wanted a big brother just like Kane. The nanny, seeing the prince's loneliness, told him there was a way to make Kane his big brother. That way was to marry Diana. The recap ends with the image of the prince peeking over a balcony, his true, twisted motivation now clear. Kane's mother and the head chef approach him, the chef stating that he heard Kane has been leaving carrots on his plate and asking if he dislikes them. His mother presents a platter of freshly baked goods, explaining that she had the chef cook them to relieve his hunger. Kane's face contorts in horror at the sight of carrot-filled pastries. Ilverino asks if he left some on his plate while he was grounded, but Kane denies it, wondering how they found out about his aversion. He reflects on the carrots of this world, which he finds disgusting. Although he has memories of eating them in his past life, in this new body they taste terrible, making him feel like a completely different person. He recalls that Diana also dislikes carrots and that his mother showers her with praise to get her to eat them. His mother offers to give him the same compliments, but Kane wishes she would just leave him alone about it. Diana runs into the room, declaring it's not fair that only her brother gets a snack and that she wants some cookies too. Her father tries to stop her, but it's too late. She takes a bite of a cookie and exclaims with a radiant smile that it's delicious. Intrigued, Ilverino asks if he may have one as well, taking one as Kane looks on in surprise. Kane tries one himself and realizes the cookies don't taste like carrots at all, prompting Ilverino to remark that a lot of thought was put into them. Ilverino then cheerfully offers to make some tea for everyone. Kane thinks to himself that since he warned the tutors not to compare Diana to him, she hasn't had any more bad experiences. The scene shifts to the towers of the royal castle. At the training grounds, Kane announces that he will be introducing some newcomers. Vice Captain Fabian presents his 2 sons, Geraint and Chris, and instructs everyone to treat them like any other trainees. The younger boy introduces himself as Chris. A practice match is arranged between the Crown Prince, Chris, Kane, and Geraint, and the boys run off to begin. Kane watches Chris, a significant look on his face as he recognizes the boy. He recalls the story of the Holy Knight route from the game, where Chris, an apprentice knight, ventures into the demon forest. In that story, Diana follows Chris to interfere with his budding romance with the heroine, only to become possessed by the Demon King. The route concludes with Chris killing the possessed Diana, becoming a holy knight, and achieving a happy ending with the heroine. Geraint asks Kane if he is on good terms with Prince Al, explaining that their grandmother was the prince's nanny, so they have been playmates since they were young. The trainer comments that he is glad His Highness has a friend his own age. Geraint then turns to Kane and pointedly asks if Kane isn't the prince's friend too, leaving Kane momentarily speechless. During lunch, the boys are seen smoothly swapping the foods they dislike from each other's plates. Kane scolds them, saying that being a picky eater is not good, especially when Prince Al dislikes tomatoes. To prove a point, Prince Al takes a large bite of tomato. He struggles to chew it but proudly announces to Chris and Geraint that he can now eat tomatoes. Kane praises him for facing and overcoming his dislike. He pats the prince's head and calls him a good boy, while Chris and Geraint suggest he could just start by swapping half next time. Inspired by the prince's effort, Chris and Geraint begin eating the food they dislike as well. Cain watches them with a gentle smile, thinking that they are good and obedient children, with no trace of darkness in their hearts. He reaffirms his goal. He must get stronger to handle the Holy Night route and eliminate the Demon King before he can harm Diana. Prince Al asks Cain if there is anything he dislikes, advising him to pretend to be okay when they are out in public. Cain confidently states that he does have something he dislikes in his lunch today and puts a piece of food in his mouth, asking if he looks fine. Geraint and Chris guess that he dislikes onions or cabbage. Cain smiles to himself, glad there are no carrots, and thinks that he won't let them see his weakness that easily. Later, Cain announces that they will be playing hide and seek tag with Prince Al, a game designed to change the relationship between the prince and his parents. The boys all dress in outfits similar to the prince's, including his hairstyle. They laugh together, remarking on how much they all look alike. Cain explains the rules. Everyone will pretend to be Prince Al while a demon searches for them. If the demon touches a fake prince, the demon loses, but if they find the real Al, the demon wins. As the game begins, the boys run through the castle, and the staff they pass address them all as Your Highness, telling them not to run. The castle staff, from guards to gardeners, see the various princes hiding and playing all over the grounds. An official delivers the daily report on the crown prince's activities to the king and queen. The royal couple is bewildered by the report, which seems to show their son in multiple different places at the same time, moving impossibly fast. The next day at the training grounds, Prince Al happily runs up to Cain. He tells Cain that his parents talked to him the previous evening, asking many questions about the game, and they all had dinner together for the first time in a while. Al wishes every day could be like that, and Cain asks if he's glad. Cain is pleased, thinking to himself that everything went just as he had imagined. He believes that if Al's loneliness disappears and he grows up with a healthy mind, he won't do anything to hurt Diana, even if he chooses the heroine in the end. Fabian approaches Cain and tells him that he shouldn't play hide and seek with the prince anymore. For their next activity, Cain announces they will be looking for fossils, explaining that they are ancient creatures turned to stone that can be found in the castle's walls. He reveals that this was a hobby of a streamer from his past life. He points out a conch shell fossil embedded in a stone tile, explaining that it was cut in half when the stone was quarried. He turns the activity into a competition. Whoever finds the most wins, and the other boys get excited at the prospect of the treasure hunt. Castle staff members see the children crawling around on the floor, inspecting the walls, and wonder if they are apprentice repairmen or child gardeners. As the children sneak past, two guards discuss whether they have seen the prince, concluding that they haven't seen anyone. The official delivers his report to the king and queen, noting that there are very few reports today, but that the prince is safely playing with Cain and Geraint. The king wonders what kind of game could cause such a lack of information and whether the prince managed to win. The queen muses that perhaps her son has grown up, as the castle staff didn't simply overlook him, but the king urges her to wait. The official interrupts, reporting that the prince has become much better at speaking and even handled matters with a special envoy that morning without needing the king's permission. The king considers this new information thoughtfully. He makes a decision. From now on, he will have breakfast with his son every day. The king and queen are then seen smiling as the king warmly embraces a happy Prince Al. From a window in his manor, Cain watches a carriage pass by and wonders with a smile if his plan went well. He turns to find his parents looking at him with knowing expressions. He then notices a small, unfamiliar girl standing between them. As his family's carriage begins to depart, Cain suddenly rushes out into the street, shouting for it to stop. He stands in the middle of the road, his coat flapping in the wind as he stares after the carriage. He pants, having lost sight of the carriage and the girl inside. A shocking realization dawns on him. That little girl is the heroine of this world. A young girl named Aurora brings medicine to her sick mother, proudly announcing that she also brought eggs for nutrition. Her mother thanks her, gently chiding her for running. Aurora beams, explaining that she ran because she wants her mother to get better faster. At the dinner table, Aurora's mother announces that their 4-year-old daughter cooked the meal herself. Her father praises her, saying it's amazing for her age, and ruffles her hair as they eat. He mentions a new apprentice at the accessory shop, a boy who is good with his hands and shows great promise. He then asks Aurora, who is known as a local genius for her ability to read and write at age 4, to teach the 7-year-old apprentice so he can handle order forms. Aurora happily agrees and says good night before hopping into bed. The scene shifts to Cain, who is in his room looking utterly shocked. He recognizes the wholesome family scene he just witnessed as a fond memory flashback from the game's brutal massacre route. Kane reflects on Aurora, the game's main character, marveling that she is a true prodigy, unlike him who relies on knowledge from a past life, and he worries that her opportunities as a commoner are limited. A wild thought strikes him with the force of a revelation. He considers the possibility for a moment, his eyes wide. The idea that Aurora might also be a reincarnated person is so crazy it makes him question everything. He imagines himself coming one step closer to understanding the truth of the universe. He then dismisses the thought as ridiculous and tumbles out of bed. Lying on the floor, he complains about the lack of entertainment in this world and wishes he could play video games. He discusses the situation with Ilverino, asking if he has ever been to the Civic District. He confirms that the girl he saw earlier was indeed Aurora, the heroine of the game, and that this world is similar to it. He recalls that in the game story, Diana is the villainess who stands in Aurora's way and is destined to suffer extreme misfortune. Kane realizes that while the game's main story begins when Aurora enrolls in the academy, he has already altered the timeline by preventing her fateful first meeting with Ilverino during the Tender Memories event. He instructs Ilverino to stay away from the south side of the city and to refuse any requests by using Kane's authority as an excuse. Ilverino agrees without question, stating that he is Kane-sama's Chamberlain, after all. Kane is relieved, confident that no one else would give Ilverino business anyway. He then asks Ilverino if he has any good memories of his own. Ilverino recalls the time the Duchess gave him a set of red embroidery tools, the very first thing he ever owned for himself. Kane listens and smiles warmly, simply saying, "Is that so?" He then remembers something he watched on an occult science program in his past life. In this world, some children claim to have memories of past lives but usually forget them by age 10. As he is currently 7 years old, a chilling fear grips him. What if he forgets his past life memories and the details of the game? He realizes that if his memories fade, he will no longer be able to protect Diana from her destructive fate, and he resolves to write down every scenario he can remember. He sits at his desk, Ilverino asleep on a nearby couch, and prepares to document the future. He starts with the assassin route, also known as the massacre route, but decides against writing it down, confident that since Ilverino is now his friend, that future is already averted. He moves on to the Crown Prince route, where Diana's engagement is broken and she is married off to an old nobleman, but notes that since Al is fond of him and knows he dotes on Diana, this outcome is unlikely. He concludes that as long as things continue this way, Al won't just throw Diana away, but he still wants to find another young lady for the prince just in case. The surest way to avoid that fate, he writes, is to prevent Diana from getting engaged to the prince in the first place. Next, he considers the Holy Night route, where Chris kills a Diana who has been possessed by the Demon Lord, and notes that he has gotten to know Chris quite well. He decides the priority for this route is to defeat the Demon King himself before he can take over Diana's body, though he can't let his guard down regarding Chris. He then writes about the teacher route, where a bitter teacher, unable to inherit his family business, exposes Diana for cheating on an exam. The teacher, disgusted by Diana clinging to her status, sees her cheating. He then joins forces with Aurora to denounce Diana, which results in her being disowned and kicked out of her house. This scenario confuses Kane, as Diana is supposed to be smart in the game, so he wonders why she would cheat. He looks at the current Diana, who is having fun learning, and questions if their parents would really disown her for cheating. He wonders if pressure was the problem in the original story and considers teaching her that the value of studying isn't about rank. He briefly considers the remaining character routes but realizes he can't plan for them yet as he hasn't met the individuals involved. He resolves that for now, all he can do is guide Diana to become a cute, smart, kind, and adorable girl before she enrolls in the academy. A small voice calls out, "Onyema," from the doorway. Kane is startled to see Diana standing there, asking what he is doing. She tells him that their mother has called them for tea. He takes her hand, thanking her for coming to get him. Diana asks what he is studying, and Kane replies that it's history. She gets excited, saying she has also started history and asks if he's at the part about the hero yet. She then reaches for his notebook, but Kane snatches it away, frantically telling her she can't look at it. Diana insists, playfully demanding to see the notebook, which she thinks details all of her future misfortunes. As they struggle over the book, Ilverino appears at the door and asks what they are doing, having been told the Duchess is waiting. Kane tosses the book to Ilverino, telling him to catch it but forbidding him from looking inside. Diana immediately runs to Ilverino, demanding he give her the book. She complains that her brother is being a bully and asks Ilverino to throw the book to her. Caught between them, Ilverino makes a split-second decision. He throws the book into the roaring fireplace. Kane stares in utter horror, his hand outstretched as the book is consumed by flames. Ilverino and Diana look on, equally shocked by the sudden turn of events. Diana begins to cry, blaming herself for being selfish and wanting to see the book. Kane comforts his sobbing sister, telling her it was also his fault for leaving it where she could find it, while Ilverino looks on, not knowing what to say. Ilverino suggests Kane get a notebook with a lock, misinterpreting the situation as Kane having embarrassing puberty-related secrets. Kane realizes with dawning horror that the entire household will now see him as a young boy who writes an embarrassing diary and had to burn the evidence. Diana calls out to her brother, saying she saw him and Ayalkuin playing outside before breakfast. She puffs up her cheeks and declares that she is angry because they left her out. Kane sees this as an opportunity, thinking that if Diana also trained, she might be able to defeat the Demon King herself. He asks her if she wants to come along with them starting tomorrow morning, and she excitedly raises her fist and shouts that she'll go. She turns to her father and asks for his permission, which he readily grants. The next morning, Diana is full of energy, calling the morning run an exercise where you stretch and raise your arms high. She runs with great enthusiasm, her hair flying behind her. But her energy quickly fades, and she sits on the ground complaining that her brother lied and that this is unfair because it's not playing. She remains on the ground pouting as a guard watches over her. The guard high-fives Kane and Ayalkuin as they pass, having completed a lap. The two boys clap hands with the guard in celebration. Seeing this, Diana gets up and says she wants a high five too, but Kane tells her that only those who complete a lap can do it. Newly motivated, Diana declares that she will run too. Kane smiles to himself, pleased that the Diana strengthening operation has officially begun. The scene shifts to the main hall of the family mansion. The father holds a beaming Diana in his arms, announcing that she will go outside with him today. He declares that he has taken a day off specifically to have her all to himself. He tells Kane that he will have to go to the castle alone today, but Diana looks worried, remembering she has a lesson with her tutor. The father reassures her, saying he will have the sensei look over Ilverino's studies instead so the teacher's time is not wasted. He winks, telling her that since he's heard how excellent she is at her studies, it's fine to take a single day off. He then asks his daughter where she would like to go. Diana's eyes sparkle as she shouts out her desired destination, the riverbed. They arrive at a vast, rocky riverbed next to their parked carriage. Diana explains that she wants to find her own, strong stone, for stone throwing, just like the one Serenasta gave her. She eagerly gathers a large pile of stones from the riverbed floor. Later, with her dress now covered in dirt, Diana and her father visit a clothing store. Her father asks the shopkeeper to find something his daughter can wear immediately, as her current dress is soiled. He also requests comfortable clothes for playing outside, and the shopkeeper happily agrees to bring them right away. After changing into a new dress, Diana announces that their next stop is the bookstore. Her father tells her to pick any book she likes, and she gets excited about the new books. She becomes completely absorbed in reading, looking at various books with intense focus. Her eyes land on a particular set of books with illustrated covers. Her father explains that one book is about a female knight, a story that has become popular as a stage play in town where women portray both knights and princesses. Diana looks at the illustration of the female knight with a blush and a look of awe. She declares that she too wants to be a strong, cool person who beats up those who bully the weak. Her father is visibly surprised by her passionate declaration. He thinks to himself that helping the weak is the pride of nobility, even from a young age, as Diana asks for the book. He smiles down at her and says that if it's Diana, he knows she can become a strong person. She beams at his words and promises that if she becomes a knight, she will protect him too, and he says he will look forward to it. Afterwards, they sit in a cafe, and her father tells her to go ahead and order anything she likes. He then tells the waitress to bring them one of every kind of cake they have. A mountain of cakes and pastries is placed on the table before a stunned and overjoyed Diana. She worries she won't be able to eat dinner, but her father tells her they can just say they already ate and keep it a secret. She happily digs in but quickly begins to feel full, lamenting that she wants to eat everything. Her father suggests that she just take one bite of each cake. Diana looks confused, so he clarifies that she can just take one bite and leave the rest behind. He smiles contentedly as she looks at the remaining cakes with uncertainty. Kane's voice echoes in Diana's memory, scolding her that wasting food is bad and that untouched snacks can be given to the servants. Diana realizes Kane will find out she skipped lunch if she brings home leftovers, and she asks her father if they can take them with them. A great idea suddenly pops into her head, her face lighting up with inspiration. They arrive at a church, where Diana greets the head priest. She announces that she is bringing everyone a souvenir today. Inside, the children of the orphanage are seen happily eating the leftover cakes, while Diana's father looks on in a state of shock. The children laugh and enjoy the unexpected treat. The father tells Diana that he is going to the carriage first and that she can ask the head priest to bring her out after they finish eating. He stands alone on a rooftop, looking out over the city as he reflects. He muses that while he heard the crown prince also played with the orphans, Diana's actions today are the kind of attitude that is unwelcomed by aristocrats. He thinks that picking stones at her age is fine, as is leaving some cake behind since it's a luxury item. But he considers the act of taking home leftovers to be shameful for a noble. He continues his internal monologue, thinking that while giving to orphans is good, eating with them and sharing half-eaten food is wrong. He believes that is simply incorrect for a person of her station. He wonders what influenced Diana, believing that her actions go beyond the aristocratic pride of helping the weak. He dismisses her tutors as the source of this behavior, as they all come from aristocratic backgrounds. He suspects Cain, who sometimes doesn't distinguish between aristocrats and commoners, but he knows Cain rarely goes outside the estate. He is left pondering where this influence on his daughter could have come from. He sits in the carriage with Diana, concluding that her future of being a villainess has been avoided, even if just a little. He thinks that these small ripples of change go unnoticed, and he was the only one who questioned them. The scene focuses on the book that Diana got from the store, held tightly in her arms. The narrator states that this book would eventually lead to a commotion, without Diana ever knowing it. A stick lies on the ground, surrounded by fallen leaves. A hand reaches down to pick it up as a young girl, Diana, watches with intent. She grasps the stick with both hands and, with a mighty cry, brandishes it like a weapon, declaring it the holy sword, Ariad. Running to her brother Cain, she tells him to look at her new sword, which he recognizes from her favorite picture book, Female Knight, Nina. Cain playfully acts the part of a villain, calling her cocky, and Diana gets into character as Girl Knight Diana, vowing to make him regret his words. She swings the stick with surprising force, making Cain cry out in mock alarm. Diana poses triumphantly, proclaiming that cuteness is justice and cute girls are unstoppable, while Cain internally questions the book's strange dialogue. The scene shifts to the ducal estate where a magic lesson is in progress. The magic instructor, Turno-sensei, arrives carrying baskets filled with what Cain recognizes as magic stones. The teacher confirms that they are indeed magic stones. She explains that these stones are used throughout the mansion as a power source for cooking and lighting. She holds up a depleted stone, explaining that it has been enchanted with light magic but is currently out of mana, and demonstrates how to inject her own mana into it. The stone in her hand begins to glow brightly as she channels her energy. Turno-sensei assigns the day's training. The children must practice their mana control by filling all the stones in the baskets. She reminds them that while producing raw elemental magic is easy, this task requires them to project only pure, non-elemental mana. Both Aelkuin and Diana try, but report that their stones are not glowing. Cain also struggles, unable to charge the stone, and grows frustrated, believing his excellent reincarnated body should make any task easy. Turno-sensei is delighted, exclaiming that she can finally do something that feels like teaching, since Cain and Diana learned elemental magic almost instantly. She begins to carefully explain the proper technique for mana injection. Dian, concentrating with his eyes closed, manages to make his stone light up faintly, showing a natural affinity for the task. Diana strains with all her might, grunting with effort as she attempts to force mana into her stone. Cain closes his eyes and focuses his own power intently. His stone suddenly begins to glow with immense brightness, and Turnoa warns him to stop, saying he's putting in too much mana at once. The stone overloads and explodes in a brilliant flash of light. Stunned that he failed, Cain listens as his teacher uses his mistake as a lesson for Diana, instructing her to inject her mana slowly. That evening, Ilverino turns off the lights in Cain's room, and Cain remarks that the mana exercise was harder than he expected. The ceiling begins to sparkle, and Cain realizes the fragments of the exploded magic stone are shining like stars in the night. He gazes up at the beautiful, glittering ceiling. The scene transitions to the outside of a building. Ilverino presents a finely made handkerchief to Elise, explaining that the orphanage made it with the materials she donated and wanted her to have their finest product. Elise admires the cute handkerchief, noting that the children are gradually improving their skills. She expresses her happiness and thanks him for the gift. The story then follows Aurora as she visits an accessory shop. The shopkeeper explains that the orphans are learning embroidery and gave him a handkerchief as thanks for his charity. Aurora examines the gift, remarking that it's pretty and uses nice fabric, while the shopkeeper says he feels bad accepting it. She reassures him, saying that everyone at the orphanage will be happy if he takes it. She adds that the children will be able to earn their own money by selling the handkerchiefs. They will be even happier, she explains with a bright smile, when they can come to his store as paying customers. Back at the manor, Cain learns from Ilverino about the orphanage's plan to sell embroidered handkerchiefs. Ilverino reports that they haven't yet decided where to sell them, but since the Duchess only donated the materials, she will surely approve of the children's enterprise. Cain considers appointing a store for them but quickly dismisses the idea, worrying about the children's ability to provide a stable supply of quality products. An idea strikes him as he remembers the upcoming Kamuari festival. He recalls that the New Year's Eve festival is a major date event in the game, with stalls set up all over town. He proposes that they let the orphanage build a stall in front of the temple to sell their wares there, an idea Ilverino praises. Inspired, Diana declares that she will do handkerchief embroidery too. Cain suggests they also make some to add to the items for sale. At the accessory shop, Aurora and the shopkeeper discuss the festival plan. A customer worries about what will happen if there are a lot of leftovers. Aurora expresses concern that the children who did the embroidery will find the festival boring if they have to work. The shopkeeper agrees that while it makes business sense, it is a special day for the children. Aurora leans over the counter with a confident smile, telling them there is no need to worry. She assures them that everything is going to be fine. A festive town is seen at night, its buildings adorned with glowing lights for a celebration. Cain, Ilverino, and Diana, all bundled in warm clothes and cute animal-themed hats, look up at the decorations with wonder. From a high vantage point, they see that the magic stones they imbued with mana are the source of the town's brilliant illumination. Their magic teacher, Ternoa, jokingly complains that lighting the town for the Kamuatari festival is the mage corps' job and asks Cain for payment for the trouble. Cain asks his mother if it's alright for Ilverino to join them for the festival tour. He mentions that the mansion is hosting a banquet for the servants, and Ilverino might be expected at the orphanage's party as well. Ilverino says it's alright, reasoning that if he went to the orphanage, his share of food would just reduce the amount available for everyone else. The three children continue their walk through the magically lit festival streets. People at a temple give thanks to God for another year. The crowd prays for God to take care of them in the coming year, while someone offhandedly remarks on Diana's cute rabbit hat. Diana excitedly declares that she will make the loudest sound today as they approach the temple bell. A man tells them the bell is for the young lady, but they explain they will ring it together, and Diana puffs out her cheeks in determination. Cain tells everyone to hold the rope properly, intending to ring the bell so hard it can be heard all over the city. The three children pull the rope together, their faces alight with pure joy. The sound of the bell rings out through the night. Diana's mother remarks that her daughter has matured, staying up so late, while Diana wonders if the castle is also lit up with magic. Just as Cain thinks they won't meet Prince Al tonight, Diana announces that she needs to go to the toilet. She makes Cain promise not to leave the spot and warns that she will hate him if he goes back on his own. As Cain waits alone, a mysterious woman with long, dark hair asks if he knows the meaning of Kamuatari. She explains that it is a festival about an old god returning to heaven and being replaced by a new one, and that the lights are to see them off and welcome the new arrival. The woman adds with a smirk that no one has actually ever seen a god. Cain looks at her intently, considering her words. He reflects that while religion isn't very popular in this country, the existence of magic makes the existence of gods seem plausible. The woman then asks Cain if he believes that there are different worlds other than this one. She elaborates, suggesting that a soul could go back and forth between this world and others. Just then, Diana returns, calling for her brother and asking to borrow his handkerchief. She proudly shows him her own handkerchief, which has an embroidery of the holy sword Ariad on it. Cain becomes flustered, thinking she is trying to make him buy her first embroidery product, and frantically insists that he already paid Ilverino for it. Diana puts a hand on his shoulder, patting it gently. She teases him, saying it's fine and that he's not like her Oniai-sama, who only recently started to like her. She yawns, and Cain takes her hand, deciding it's time to go back. He glances back for a moment. He turns to find that the mysterious woman has vanished without a trace. Back at the manor, Ilverino has news. He reports that the handkerchiefs made by the orphanage sold out, and that a new custom called Osibo has suddenly become popular among the commoners. Kane stares in shock at the news. Ilverino explains that Osibo is the giving of gifts to people who have taken care of you over the year as a sign of gratitude. The simple, relaxing handkerchiefs have become a popular gift for family members and acquaintances. The word Osibo strikes a chord deep within Kane, as he recognizes it from his past life in Japan. He realizes there must be another person from his original world here, and he wonders with growing concern if that person will try to affect Diana's future. During a training session, a large knight swings a wooden sword at a much smaller Aelkuin. Diana shouts for Aelkuin to watch out as she witnesses the mock attack. She leaps into the rose garden, brandishing a stick and declaring the arrival of young girl knight Diana, who will not tolerate the bullying of the weak. The knight apologizes profusely as Aelkuin explains that he had asked the man for lessons, and Diana graciously tells him to forgive the knight. Aelkuin then kneels and offers Diana his practice sword, telling her that she too wants to study swordplay. He explains, however, that they would be scolded if they trained her without permission and she got injured. Aelkuin suggests they do it properly after she receives permission, but Diana holds her stick and declares that his refusal is mean. At the dinner table that evening, Diana asks her parents if she can train in swordplay, surprising them. Her mother remarks that Diana is adorable now and will surely be beautiful in the future. Diana explains her desire to learn swordplay and become a knight, and her father agrees to let the butler, Palavant, teach her for self-defense. She excitedly describes her vision of knights from her picture book. They wear cool white uniforms, beat up bad guys, and offer a hand to their female victims. Her father's expression hardens, and he flatly refuses, stating that swordplay training is too dangerous. He explains that he would be sad if Diana were to get hurt, leaving Kane and Diana looking disappointed. Kane then proposes a compromise, asking his father to let her train with the Royal Knights just once. He knows that the knights Diana described wear white uniforms, which are the formal attire of the Royal Knights, unlike their own household knights who wear blue. He privately recalls the brutal reality of the Royal Knights training, which involves getting thrown around and suffering nosebleeds, an image far from Diana's fantasy. He hopes that if she sees how dangerous it truly is, she will give up, but Diana eagerly says she wants to go see the training. Her father relents, agreeing to the visit on the condition that the knights themselves give their permission. Diana clenches her fists and cheers, "Yay!" At the castle, the Crown Prince happily notes that he is also present during the knights' training sessions, prompting Ilverino to point out the flaw in Kane's plan. Kane realizes he has messed up, having forgotten that he didn't want Diana and the prince to meet. The scene shifts to the Royal Guard training grounds, a large walled courtyard. The vice commander tells them they can come and visit anytime as long as they provide advance notice. A knight is sent flying during a particularly intense sparring match. Kane watches the brutal training with a smile, confident that this harsh reality will be enough to make Diana give up on her dream. The children watch as the knights continue their rough practice. Diana looks on with a serious expression. Instead of being deterred, she boldly approaches the vice commander and asks to participate in the training. He tells her that she is just here to watch and must go back inside the tent, as it's too dangerous and she can't wield a sword in her dress. The other boys watch the confrontation, wondering what is happening. Diana cries out for Aelkuin. He promptly arrives with a change of clothes, and Diana, now dressed for practice, renews her plea to participate. The prince interjects, telling Diana to just watch for today because he would cry if she got hurt, which shocks Kane, who was not informed of this plan. Diana pleads with the prince to train with her, promising she won't get hurt and suggesting they keep it a secret from her father. The prince offers to be her sparring partner, challenging her to take just 1 point from him. He quietly tells the worried vice commander that he's sure Diana will give up once she realizes she can't win. The prince and Diana stand facing each other in the training yard. Diana struggles with the heavy wooden sword, thinking that if she makes it quick, Kane will surely give her a compliment. Kane's mother asks the vice commander to please ensure Diana doesn't get hurt, while Kane thinks to himself that the situation is bad. The vice commander signals for the match to begin. Diana charges forward with shocking speed, surprising the prince. She swings her sword with incredible force. The vice commander is forced to leap in and block her strike just before it connects with the prince. He clutches his hand in pain, remarking that the blow might leave a bruise. Dazed and confused, he turns to Kane and asks if he was the one who taught Diana swordplay. Kane can only offer a strained, nervous smile in response. In a grand room, the Duchess sits opposite her children, reminding Diana that her father forbade her from studying swordplay. She continues, stating that Diana didn't listen and still did it anyway, as Cain and Ilverino look on with somber expressions. Diana denies studying swordplay at all, but her mother accuses her of lying, reasoning that she couldn't be that good on her first try. Diana then perks up, asking if that means her swordplay was good. Ilverino tries to take the blame for the training clothes, explaining he prepared them to make it easier for Diana to wear a dress to the castle. He says he brought up the idea because of the situation, but his true intention was just to get Diana to wear a proper dress. The mother asks the head butler, Palavant, if Diana is practicing with the guard knights, which he denies, so she asks where her daughter learned swordsmanship. Palavant reveals that the training took place in Cain's room while he was giving her guidance as they played female knight Nina. Cain and Ilverino bow their heads in shame, unable to meet their mother's gaze. Diana stands up defiantly, telling her mother that bullying the weak is not good. Her mother calmly replies that no one is bullying anyone and that this matter is about Diana herself. She instructs Diana to end her tomboyish ways and to put effort into being a proper lady, starting with dropping her nickname D and using I instead. Diana is taken aback by the command, whispering the word lady in confusion. Cain immediately stands up and intervenes, explaining that Diana uses the nickname D because it was a sign of their family's bond, started by her parents. He tells his mother to stop treating the name like a bad word, as it is precious to Diana. The Duchess looks down, admitting that Cain is right and that it was also their fault. Cain presses his advantage, stating that Diana can already greet people like a proper lady and that her tutors praise her for being able to sit still for an hour, a feat a normal little girl couldn't manage. He concludes that she has already grown up to be a proper lady. His mother counters, saying that since Cain could study alone at age 4, it's only natural that Diana can as well. The butler chimes in, explaining that a nobleman's reputation is everything, and if a proper lady runs in the halls or swings a stick, it becomes a mark against her. Cain is stunned by this logic, his mouth agape. He realizes with a jolt that because of his own advanced development, his mother feels pressured to rush Diana's education into that of a perfect lady. He worries that this pressure to conform will stifle Diana's kind nature and turn her into the villainess from the game. Diana speaks up, telling her mother that her father said it was okay for her to become a knight. Both her mother and Cain are shocked by this revelation. Diana recounts the time her father bought her the book about Nina and told her she would definitely become a knight. She recalls his words, "If Dee became a knight, protect father too, okay?" The scene shifts to the 3 children in a sun-drenched room filled with plants. Cain observes his mother, concluding that she does not want Diana to become a knight, or even to pretend to be one. He turns to a pouting Diana and tells her not to hold back and to just make an effort. He takes her hands and tells her that he doesn't want her to give up on her dreams, reminding her that she is still only 4 years old. He thinks to himself that her future occupation will likely change many times as she grows, just as she was influenced by the picture book. But he also acknowledges the reality that as a duke's daughter, her only real future is to marry into a noble family of similar rank. He embraces her, thinking that even if that is her only choice, the act of choosing it for herself is a completely different matter. He asks Ilverino and Diana if they know a story about a noblewoman who is adept with both swords and magic, thinking that it's fine for at least one to exist. He tells them a tale of a corrupt nobleman who was brought to justice by a traveling old man, who was secretly a retired former prime minister. He concludes the story by saying the old man delivered justice to the bad nobleman. Cain proposes a new strategy to Diana. To punish the wicked, she must first deceive everyone by acting like a proper lady to let their guard down, even their parents. He strikes a pose, demonstrating how to act like a frail, sheltered lady who has never held anything heavier than a fan. He then performs an acrobatic flip with a flourish. His face becomes serious as he looks over his shoulder. He declares that this frail persona is just a disguise to hide her true self from the world. He lands in a crouch, holding a ruler like a sword, and announces the arrival of female knight Diana, an ally of justice whose true identity is to help the weak and frustrate the strong. Diana and Ilverino applaud, both exclaiming how cool it was. Cain lays out the plan. Diana will become a lady that her mother can acknowledge by perfecting her etiquette and dancing, all while secretly training her sword and magic skills to become stronger. He declares that he will learn to behave like a gentleman as well, and together they will pursue their respective educations. The father returns home and is informed that the crown prince and Diana fought. His wife explains that the match was stopped before Diana could get a point because it was his fault for making a cheap offer. She tells him that Diana is now sulking and that he must calm her down properly, and he apologizes. The father wonders how he should approach his daughter. At dinner, Diana is escorted to her seat by a maid, behaving with perfect poise and quiet dignity. She formally addresses her parents, asking for their forgiveness for her embarrassing behavior as the daughter of a duke at the knight's training. Cain and the father also apologize, with Cain explaining he only taught her swordsmanship for self-defense in an emergency. The mother and father look at each other, surprised by this display of maturity. The mother tells them to raise their heads, saying that as long as they understand, it's fine, and they can eat dinner. After the meal, Diana is ecstatic that they didn't get scolded, and Cain tells her it's because she washed it with her good behavior. She proudly states that even she managed to act like a lady during dinner, and Cain agrees she was a perfect lady. Cain then tells her he will secretly teach her swordsmanship and martial arts, adding that Ilverino is actually better at that sort of thing and is a stronger ninja than him. Diana is impressed, while Ilverino is simply confused, asking what a ninja is. From that day on, the children's speech and behavior changed, which at first confused their parents, but they eventually accepted their children's growth. When the children were alone, they would speak in plain language. They would play as the female knight Nina and practice their swordplay together. 4 years later, Cain is now 11 years old, the year he is set to enroll in the magic school where the game is set, but something is wrong. He stares at his new school uniform, realizing with a shock that it's not the uniform of Damagaku. A few years have passed. Cain is now 11 years old, and Diana is 9. During a tea party, a young noble lady asks Cain if he has any hobbies. Another girl compliments Diana's hairstyle, and Diana happily explains it's because of the ribbon her Oni-sama gave her. The first girl reveals that her hobby is acting and invites Cain to come and see her perform sometime. She then asks Cain if he would like to take a stroll with just the two of them in the garden. A flustered Cain deflects, suggesting Diana hold hands with the girl instead. The girl looks horrified at the suggestion of being left alone with Diana, leaving Cain speechless. Her terrified expression lingers in the air. Later, as Cain walks down the stairs, Ilverino asks if the other nobles made him angry again. Cain explains that all the female nobles his age are undoubtedly aiming to become engaged to Prince L. Ilverino asks if it's true that the prince hasn't chosen a fiancée other than Diana yet. He then informs a shocked Cain that his school uniform has just arrived and the entrance exam is approaching. Cain sees the uniform and panics, realizing it's not the same one from Damagaku, the school where the game is set, and fears he might not be able to get in. He knows that Damagaku is the top school in the country and that most eldest sons of noble families attend it. His father appears and makes a stunning announcement. Cain will be studying abroad at the aristocratic school in the neighboring kingdom of Cerium. He explains that since Cain's studies have already progressed to a 6th grade level, it would be meaningless for him to attend Damagaku in their own country. Cain argues that school isn't just about studying, but also about making important connections with nobles of his own age. His father agrees but states that as the next head of the Duke family, he wants Cain to use his fluency in foreign languages to expand ties with neighboring countries. He points out that the kingdom of Cerium is conveniently adjacent to their own family's territory, making it a useful connection. Cain suggests a 1-year exchange program would be sufficient to achieve that goal. His father reveals the true reason for sending him away. It's to separate him from Diana. He recounts the disastrous prearranged marriage talk where Cain's dismissive attitude caused all the prospective young ladies to go home angry. Cain clarifies what he wants in a marriage partner. Someone who won't get jealous of his prioritizing Diana and who could even love Diana alongside him. He exclaims that there's no way he could get along with a partner without his sister being involved. His father sternly rebukes him, saying that looking at a person in a bored manner because they bring up topics unrelated to Diana is not a gentlemanly thing to do. He advises Cain that if a young lady compliments Diana, he should be the first to praise the lady in return to foster an enjoyable conversation. Cain asks why he should praise someone else when Diana is right next to him. Because of this obsessive attitude, his father declares that the two of them must be separated at once. He issues a patriarchal order with no room for reasoning. Cain is forbidden from returning home until he graduates in 6 years, leaving Cain horrified at the prospect. Cain desperately thinks of all the ways Diana will grow and change in those 6 years, turning from a child into a young woman. He cries out that he doesn't want to miss a single moment of her cute growth and begs his father to reconsider. But no matter how much Cain appealed, the decision to have him study abroad was not overturned, with his father muttering that he's being a creep. Cain looks at the admission guide for his new school with a sense of dread. He entrusts Ilverino with a solemn duty, to protect Diana while he is not around. Ilverino immediately declares that he has decided to go along with Kane, but Kane explains that it's a boarding school and he can't bring a chamberlain. He asks Ilverino to make their home a place where Diana can take a break from the pressures of acting like a proper lady. Diana enters the room and calls out to her brother. She asks him if it's true that he is going to a foreign country. She looks at him with pleading eyes and asks if he would still go away if she asked him to stay. He tells her that it would be difficult this time, and her face falls with sadness. She hugs him tightly, asking if they can sleep together tonight. Her attendant, Sasha, immediately objects, declaring that it is against ethics and public opinion for young siblings to sleep in the same bed. Diana glares and puffs out her cheeks in defiance of the attendant's scolding. Later that night, the two siblings lie together under the covers. Diana confesses that the only reason she does her best at everything is because her Oni-sama compliments her. Kane looks at his sister with deep affection. He promises that he will still give her compliments if she writes him letters, and he will respond telling her what a smart and good girl she is. She vows that when she grows up, she will become a knight like the old man in his story, dealing with bullies herself, but leaving it to Kane to take them down officially, and asks him to come back properly. She drifts off to sleep, her real, unguarded self hidden from the world. Kane watches his sleeping sister. He takes her hand and promises that he will definitely come back. On the day of his departure, Kane thanks Fabian for his training, and Fabian tells him not to neglect it while he is away. Kane reveals that his dream is to become a Ministry of Justice official and that he only studied swordsmanship to protect Diana. Fabian tells him it's okay to be crafty but that he should also rely on adults sometimes, and to smile with more genuine feeling, not just like an honor student. Kane pretends not to understand what he is talking about. Fabian says that it's lonely when Kane, a kid he has his eye on, can't open up to him. He invites Kane to visit the Knights when he comes back for the holidays, saying everyone would be happy to see him. The prince and the Velfadia brothers wave goodbye as Kane agrees to the visit. Kane asks Fabian to take good care of the prince, explaining that he is a child who needs an adult he can rely on. He then visits his magic teacher, Ternoa, at the royal mage's office to say goodbye. He explains that he won't be going to the Cilium kingdom because it has no magic and would be boring, so he came to say his farewells. Ternoa performs a bit of magic, causing flowers to bloom in their cups of tea, and splashes Kane in the process. She explains that it's a drink made from honey-soaked Caesarata flowers. She asks Kane if he can use teleportation magic yet, and he confirms that he can, but only within his field of vision. Ternoa leans in with a scary expression, asking if he knows how terrifying that is. She reveals the true nature of teleportation. It creates a new body at the destination and then destroys the original soul's body. It's a dangerous magic, she explains, because if the new body is created inside a rock or water, the user will die, but she tells him not to worry about Diana. She reveals that she is secretly raising Diana to be the strongest wizard, telling his parents she is only teaching her how to brew tea or make flowers last longer. She tells Kane that being interesting is important, because it takes effort to tackle something boring, and she thinks Diana's disguise as a lady to hide her power is a great idea. She adds that his sister is smart and can even use the rare darkness magic. She also praises Ilverino's excellent healing magic, which fills the gaps in Kane's own abilities. Kane recalls that he was never able to use dark, healing, or holy magic in the game. Ternoa places a hand on his head, advising him that if he can't do something he should leave it to someone who can, as there are few things one can do alone. She gives him a mage's robe as a parting gift, and he thanks her, saying her lessons are fun. She promises to give him a new one when he outgrows it, telling him to make sure he comes back to get it. Kane stands by the carriage, ready to depart as his family sees him off. His father instructs him to be careful with his behavior, to act as a representative of their kingdom, and to make many friends to build diplomatic relations. His mother tells him that the winter in Salem is cold and that he must take care of his health and keep doing his best. Diana looks at him with tears welling in her eyes. He tells his sister to stay healthy and cheerful. She tearfully promises to send a lot of letters and asks him to bring back lots of souvenirs. He embraces Diana one last time and tells Ilverino to take care of his family. The butler, Palavant, informs him that the Royal Noble Academy has a great skipping system, so it should be easy for him. Kane says his final goodbyes, promising that he will definitely come back. A map details the route between the Remuto Buriki Kingdom and the Cilium Kingdom, charting a journey through the region of Nelgrandi that spans several days. Kane observes the horse-drawn carriage, contemplating the long journey ahead and noting it would take a full 7 days to travel between the kingdoms. The destination is the royal capital of the neighboring country, Cilium, a journey on which Palavant confirms he will be accompanying the young master. Their carriage moves through a vast and mountainous landscape, crossing arched stone bridges over rivers and passing lonely houses set against the wilderness. At the national border, Palavant presents their documents to an armored guard while Cain, looking out from the carriage window, notes that the language has already changed. Cain expresses his amazement, asking Palavant just how many languages of the neighboring countries he is able to speak. Cain then wonders aloud if Palavant would want to work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, since his father would be helpless in such matters. Palavant turns to Cain within the carriage and reveals a simple truth: he was originally born a commoner. He recounts his past, explaining that Cain's father found and rescued him when he was just an injured child. Palavant explains that his current self exists because of Cain's father, who ensured he learned many things and arranged for him to be adopted by a nobleman so he could enter the royal castle and continue to serve. Cain declares his own intention is different. He wants to take Ilverino with him as himself, without changing his station. He imagines proudly introducing Ilverino as a talented commoner and orphan, asking for him to help with his work, as Palavant asks if Cain has decided to pursue a career in the Ministry of Justice. Cain confirms this, adding that before he returns home, he will also study the laws of Cilium, as he recalls that due to their status, Ilverino, Chris, and his brother Geraint cannot enter the royal palace. A memory surfaces of a time when their low status prevented them from accompanying Prince Al. This recollection sparks a realization in Cain. Perhaps this is the reason for Chris aiming to become a holy knight, as he is the target of the holy knight route. If a path for Chris to become the prince's knight was opened, it would mean that Diana would not have to enter the demon forest for an accomplishment, saving her from death. Cain's thoughts clarify his resolve. He wants to create a world where a person's abilities are properly evaluated. To do that, he knows he must change the current laws. He thinks that rather than studying abroad and leaving Diana, he must inherit the dukedom, become a Ministry of Justice official, and eventually a member of the Senate. He had even considered running away from home to secretly protect Diana from the city, all to destroy even the slightest possibility of her heading towards destruction. But to achieve his goals, he realizes he must go somewhere where everyone can see him and his actions. He thanks Palavant, who then announces his departure, leaving Cain to his thoughts as he begins his journey in the Cilium kingdom. Palavant tells Cain-sama that his father is an honest man who never once thought about changing the established rules. He adds that studying abroad is not an act of neglect, though there may be things that don't suit Cain's young sensibilities. Cain looks out at the scenery, affirming that he already knows this. He arrives at the Cilium Aristocrats Academy, standing before the grand building that serves as the men's dormitory. Carrying his luggage, Cain walks through the ornate, empty halls of the dormitory, making his way to his assigned room. He opens the door to find not a private chamber, but a shared room with 2 beds and desks. As he stands in the doorway, a knock sounds from within the academy. A voice calls out to the beautiful young lady, as a handsome, long-haired youth appears from the side, running a hand through his hair. Cain stands stoically as the youth remarks on his boldness for ambushing him in his room before the entrance ceremony has even started. Placing a hand to his chest, Cain calmly introduces himself as Cain Elgrandark, a student studying abroad from the kingdom of Limit Buriki. The youth is shocked into silence, stammering that Cain is a man and demanding to know who he is and if he's his roommate, questioning why he can't understand him speaking the Silumian language. The youth declares that while he can forgive a student from abroad, it is still disrespectful not to know who he is. He puffs out his chest and proudly announces his identity as the country's first prince, Julian Cilium. Julian grabs Cain's hand for a handshake, stating this is how they greet people in Cilium, while internally demanding worship and praise. He immediately proposes a contest to Cain. Whoever gets the most girls in the academy wins. Cain's expression turns to one of utter disgust as Julian holds his hand tightly. Julian then asks if Cain has an older or younger sister, assuming she must be a knockout beauty, to which Cain bluntly replies that he doesn't have one. Cain internally panics, recognizing first Prince Julian as the man Diana marries in the neighboring country's second prince route from the game. He recalls the details of that route. The second prince of Cilium comes to study abroad and meets the main character, a commoner unfamiliar with noble rules. The two grow closer as they learn about the culture of the kingdom of Limit Buriki together. In this scenario, Diana is not engaged to her own country's crown prince. Instead, to deepen ties between the nations, a marriage talk between her and the second prince arises. This plan pushes Diana to become the concubine of the first prince, who has womanizing habits, while the first prince marries the main character. A battle between the women breaks out in the palace of Cilium, and Diana becomes known as the villainess who ruined the royal family, destined to spend her life in captivity. Cain now understands that Julian is the scoundrel who takes Diana as a concubine despite having a wife, and he resolves that staying close to him might be his best strategy. He looks at the Grand Academy building, his new home for the foreseeable future. The entrance ceremony takes place in a large hall filled with students. After the ceremony, Julian cheerfully tells Cain that they are in the same class. Other students greet Prince Julian as he and Cain walk together in their new uniforms. Julian points out a girl with long, dark hair, introducing her as Lady Silurialia Midicurian. He explains that she is the eldest daughter of a duke and his first fiancée, telling Cain to get along with her. Silurialia greets the prince, saying it has been a month, and asks with a smile if he is angry that she didn't visit, a question he wonders might be sarcasm. Julian apologizes with a sweat drop, telling her to cheer up because they will now see each other every day in the classroom. Silurialia presses him, asking how he can make her forgive him for not wanting to meet, then demands he say, "I love you, Silurialia," 100 times. Julian immediately begins shouting, "I love you," repeatedly, much to Cain's silent bewilderment. Later, Cain returns to the men's dormitory, making his way back to his room. He opens the door to find Julian sitting on his bed with another girl on his lap. Cain demands to know what they are doing, and Julian smiles, asking Cain to leave for a while. Cain stands firm, stating that he cannot overlook this because Julian already has a fiancée, a sentiment which Julian seems to understand is rooted in the fact that Cain's country is monogamous. Julian laughs, explaining that in Cilium, a man of marquis rank or higher can have up to 3 wives, while royalty can have 1 wife and 3 concubines, so it isn't cheating until he has 3 more fiancées. He reassures the girl with him to relax, promising he won't do anything shameless like getting her pregnant, as it's just to deepen their bonds, and she decides to just come by another time. Lying back on his bed, Julian declares Cilium is a wonderful country where one can have arranged marriages and still enjoy romance, telling Cain not to get in his way. Cain stares down at him with a troubled expression and asks if women can also have multiple husbands, to which Julian replies that they cannot. Julian sits up, explaining that there is a history to this custom. It is a man's responsibility to earn money to feed his family and servants. Cain, holding a book, counters this logic, pointing out that the idea of enjoying romance within a political marriage is a privilege only for men. Julian is left speechless by the sharp observation. As they argue outside the dorms, Cain yells that women are not allowed in the men's dorms to begin with, while Julian retorts that if Cain remains so stubborn, he won't be popular, to which Cain shouts back that he is fine not being popular. An academy official explains the school system to Cain, pointing out a diagram that illustrates how passing exams at the end of each year allows a student to skip grades, potentially even 2 at a time. The official clarifies the limit of this system, informing Cain that the absolute earliest he could possibly graduate is in 3 years. Determined, Cain sits in class and resolves to return home by the time the game is set to begin 3 years later, knowing he cannot afford to fail even a single time. He reflects on his academic situation, realizing that even with a private tutor and being ahead in his studies, the literature class is uniquely difficult due to the foreign language, giving him fewer advantages than he expected. A friendly classmate turns to Cain, noting that as an international student, he probably doesn't know the history or geography of their country. Cain's new classmates kindly offer to help him with anything he doesn't understand, an offer which he gratefully accepts. Prince Julian announces that he and his fiancée, Siluria, will show Cain around the town, telling him to change his clothes and meet them at the gate. Julian looks crestfallen as Siluria prepares to depart, barely managing a sound as she says she will see him later. Cain observes this exchange and concludes that Julian seems to be seriously in love with Siluria. Cain stifles a laugh, remarking that Julian has the face of a dog left behind by its owner, prompting an indignant Julian to demand what he's laughing about. After changing clothes, the group meets in town, where Siluria, now in a beautiful dress and hat, looks so stunning that Julian can only stare in awe. Cain is left speechless for a moment, standing beside a smiling Julian who is captivated by his fiancée's appearance. As Julian declares he wants to eat meat, Cain internally scolds the prince for failing to compliment his fiancée first after she went to the effort of dressing up. Kane steps forward and showers Saluria-sama with praise, telling her the dress looks nice, the color suits her, and the hat has the wonderful effect of making her face appear smaller. Saluria listens to the compliments with a delighted, happy smile, giggling to herself. She thanks Kane for noticing her efforts to make her face look smaller, but playfully adds that he should have kept that particular part in his mind, causing him to apologize profusely. Saluria tells Kane he's really something for noticing her fashion sense, but adds that Julian should be the one giving her such compliments if that's what he thinks. Julian explains his reasoning, stating that her being beautiful is just normal, so there is nothing special about complimenting something so common. Kane can only stare, thinking to himself that this prince is completely hopeless. The three of them find an outdoor cafe and sit down for lunch, enjoying their time in the town. Saluria asks Kane what he plans to buy, and he responds that he wants to get textbooks for the second year. Julian suggests he might be able to get a used one from an upperclassman, while Saluria notes they can be bought at used bookstores or new from the dorm's supervisor. Kane asks if royalty and high-ranking nobles like them would really consider second-hand books, to which Julian replies that old things still have value. Julian elaborates that second-hand books can contain useful notes and old leather shoes are already worn in and soft, though he also concedes some old items, like shoes with athlete's foot, are useless. He smiles, concluding that it's a good idea to look for a used item that is truly authentic. Saluria agrees that a good product remains good even if it's old, but adds that new products made by skilled craftsmen are irreplaceable, and there are many ways to value things. Kane considers their words, realizing that the nobles from Cilium may have a much softer, more practical mindset than he first thought. While browsing a bookstore, his eyes land on a particular volume on the shelf. He pulls the book out, identifying it as the Cilium version of the story, Why Rabbit Ears Are Long. Julian sees him holding the picture book and asks what he's going to do with it, pointing out that it's not a textbook. Kane looks at the book with a gentle smile, explaining that back in his home country, there is a girl who loves this story. The scene shifts to a memory of his sister, Diana, her face lit with wonder as she looks at something precious. Back in the Elgrindark Manor, Ilverino reads a letter from Kane aloud, his expression growing more concerned as he relays Kane's dramatic words about feeling like he'll die without Diana, who suggests it would be nice if she could visit him. Diana calls out to Aelcuin, asking for his advice, but seeing no one else around, she suggests they invite Sasha to join them. The narrative introduces Sasha, Diana-sama's maid for the past 2 years, who is unaware of her lady's true tomboy personality and acts as a strict discipline teacher regarding etiquette and manners. Diana realizes that since Sasha takes care of everything from her appearance to her schedule, she cannot keep deceiving her forever about her true self hiding behind the persona of a proper lady. She knows that to continue secretly training her sword and magic skills without her parents getting suspicious, she needs Sasha's help to cover for her. She asks Ilverino what he thinks she should do, acknowledging that she must be careful or their secret could be revealed. Ilverino listens with a serious expression, deciding he will investigate Sasha's surroundings. He plans to find an opportunity to exploit by learning everything about her, from her hobbies and friends to her personal likes and dislikes. Diana enthusiastically asks Aelcuin to handle it, calling him an expert ninja, a title he immediately denies as he accepts the task. Ilverino's investigation begins, revealing that Sasha is the third daughter of a viscount and a graduate of the Unlimited Magic Academy. After graduation, she went to work at the royal palace hoping to find a husband and was assigned as a senior maid in the Knight's Wing. Her experience there, surrounded by men who were big, scary, annoying, and smelled of sweat and mud, completely destroyed her desire to get married. She changed her future dream, deciding to live her life to the fullest as a super maid serving by the side of a pretty young lady, with her hobbies now being reading and going to the theater. Her passion for the theater is focused on a particular type of performance. She is an avid member of an all-female opera company's fan club, captivated by the performances. After hearing his report, Diana thanks Aelcuin profusely for the invaluable information. She devises a plan, reasoning that if Sasha likes knights played by beautiful women in men's clothing, then a real female knight might just be one of her favorite things. Diana wonders aloud if they need to get along with Sasha or simply take advantage of her weakness to make her protect their secret. Ilverino advises against taking advantage of her weaknesses, warning that it's a risky strategy that could easily lead to betrayal. He explains that if they were to grasp one of her weaknesses, and then someone else appeared offering to solve it for her, she would definitely betray them. Diana concedes that might happen and agrees with a smile that it's better to simply get along with her after all. At that moment, a knock sounds at the door and Sasha enters, announcing that some packages have arrived from Kane-sama. Diana immediately switches into her proper lady mode, commenting that her Oniai-sama mentioned sending a package in his letter and politely asking Ilverino to open it. The package contains tea leaves, an accessory, and a book in the Salumian language titled, Why Rabbit Ears Are Long. Diana's eyes widen as she remembers the key piece of information from Ilverino's report. Reading and watching plays are Sasha's hobbies. Putting her plan into motion, Diana turns and asks Sasha if she can read the Salumian language. Sasha confirms that she learned it at school and can read simple sentences, though she has never read anything besides textbooks. Diana then declares that she will lend the book to Sasha. She hands the book over, explaining that since she is still studying Salumian, she needs Sasha to read it first and confirm its contents, asking her to please take care of the gift from her brother. Diana adds with a charming smile that if the story is similar to their country's version, she might be able to use it as a textbook. Her expression is the picture of sweet innocence. Sasha hesitantly accepts the book, reasoning that if it is an order from her lady, there is nothing she can do, and agrees to check the contents. Diana then tells Sasha to please use the black tea for their next tea time, inviting her to drink with them so she can hear her opinion about the book. A genuinely happy smile spreads across Sasha's face as she agrees. As Sasha departs, Ilverino stands beside a triumphant Diana and quietly announces that Operation Become Friends starts now. Kane sits at his desk writing a letter, expressing his gratitude and asking if Diana is being a good girl, pleased that she seems to be trying her best to get closer to Sasha. The scene shifts to Diana, who holds the letter with Sasha and proudly declares that she is now a wonderful lady, having realized on her own that getting to know someone is important for friendship. She continues her proud declaration. Back in the dorm room, Julian and another student see Kane at his desk and ask why he doesn't have his part-time job today, with the other student noting how beautiful Kane's face is. Kane turns with a glare, asking Julian if he had planned to bring women to the room while he was gone, but Julian explains that he simply switched shifts with another student. Julian's visitors are apologetic, but he dismisses their concerns, leading Kane to question if Julian is fine with any woman at all. Julian winks, explaining that while some girls refuse his invitations, he makes sure to choose ones who seem tight-lipped and have large chests, a confession that makes Kane call him the worst. As Kane puts his letter in an envelope, Julian asks if it is from his family. Julian then asks if Kane will be going back to his parents' house for the upcoming vacation, but Kane replies that he will be spending the vacation working part-time. Kane thinks about the situation. In Cilium, a flower festival means the school will be closed for 2 weeks, but with the journey home taking 7 days each way, there isn't enough time. He stands with Julian, lamenting that he has no money for traveling expenses, as his parents only gave him enough to enjoy his student life, not enough to go home. He recalls his parents' logic, realizing they must have anticipated he might try to come back sooner and adjusted his allowance specifically to prevent it, forcing him to get a job to experience the local culture. Julian sips tea and explains that in this kingdom, during the seed sowing season, festivals are held all over the land to pray for fertility. Because these festivals are hosted by the nobles who are lords of the lands, more than half of the students at the academy return to their homes, leaving the school closed for vacation. Kane realizes this would place a heavy burden on the nobles of the territories, while the nobles who remain in the capital simply hoard their assets. To counteract this, Julian explains, the nobles who stay in the capital hold their own flower festival, decorating the town with flowers, opening their proud gardens, and serving refreshments to the citizens. Kane remarks that this is a surprisingly cruel system, designed to make them spend their money. The result is a city full of stalls where everyone sings and dances in the square, causing the economy to turn around. Saluria approaches their table, asking if the two of them are talking about the flower festival. Julian turns to her with a smile, asking Saluria what she is planning to do on the last day of the festival. She asks about Julian-sama's plan for the final day, prompting Kane to wonder if they both want to be invited by the other. Julian boasts dramatically that he is in such high demand that it's troublesome, and he hasn't yet decided who he will go with. Saluria's expression hardens as she stands up, declaring that she will look around with her brother and telling Julian-sama to please enjoy spending time with any woman he likes. She storms off, leaving a shocked and speechless Julian reaching out after her. Kane can only facepalm at the prince's incredible denseness. He asks Julian what is so special about the last day of the flower festival. Julian explains that on that last day, it is tradition for lovers and engaged couples to roam the town and dance with each other. Kane turns away, muttering under his breath that Julia-sama is truly an idiot. Despite that awkward exchange, the flower festival vacation began, and the city bloomed with flowers and activity. A sign welcomes visitors to the Midicurian family garden, now open for the festival. Siluria finds Kane, noting that he is looking for a part-time job and asking if he would like to help at her family's garden, an offer he enthusiastically accepts. While working, Kane sees a group of nobles arriving and being welcomed to the estate, addressed as Julia-sama and Gianluca-sama. The head of the house welcomes the princes, inviting them to look at the garden and mentioning they will find Siluria in the back. Siluria approaches them, but before she can greet the prince, Julian tells Kane he wants to introduce someone to him. Julian gestures to the boy beside him, introducing his little brother, Gianluca, who gives a polite hello. Kane is frozen in shock, recognizing Gianluca as this country's second prince, the very same capture target who is supposed to study abroad at Domagic Academy in the game. Gianluca smiles brightly, extending a hand and explaining that he has heard a lot about Kane Dano from his brother, which made him want to talk as well. Kane shakes his hand, formally stating that it is an honor to meet Prince Gianluca, who then asks if Kane can use magic. Gianluca continues, a hopeful and curious expression on his face. Julian smiles at their interaction, telling Kane he wants him to make time later to talk more with Gianluca, and Kane agrees. As the brothers walk away, Siluria observes Julian with a thoughtful expression. She turns her attention to a nearby greenhouse, remarking on how beautifully the flowers are blooming there. Julian, sampling a treat, agrees that today is the best time to see them, and Siluria seems pleased. The two of them sit at a table in the garden, surrounded by blossoming trees. Seeing his chance, Kane turns to a group of nearby children and announces that this is Prince Julian, and they can go shake his hands, prompting an internal cry of, "Are you dense?" from Siluria. Kane tells the children that they might become lucky if they manage to touch the prince. The children swarm Julian, grabbing at him as he protests that people are not Lucky Charms and calls out to Kane and Siluria for help. Kane seizes the moment, turning to Siluria and declaring they should take a look at the greenhouse she was talking about. She brightens up immediately, and together they walk off as she says she will lead the way. Gianluca watches them go, realizing his brother didn't understand that Kane had just created an excuse for him and Siluria to visit the greenhouse together. Gianluca muses that normally his brother is busy inviting girls everywhere, but perhaps in this modest, indirect way, he hasn't even realized what is happening. Kane stands with his arms crossed, a knowing look on his face as he watches the couple walk away. Kane stands in a kitchen, skillfully flipping an omelette in a frying pan. He expertly plates the finished dish, its shape perfect and steaming. A group of fellow students look on in amazement, asking if he's the rumored student from the Buriki Kingdom and if he can even cook. As more students ask him to cook for them, a smiling upperclassman explains that with the academy closed for an extended time, even the cafeteria chefs are gone. The upperclassman, Meidi-senpai, notes that he and Kane-sama seem to work together often after school. A student comments that Meidi-senpai also seems used to cooking, and Meidi explains he plans to open a restaurant after graduating, so he practices by treating everyone to his cooking. Kane asks if Meidi isn't from a Viscount family, and Meidi replies that his girlfriend is the daughter of the owner of the town's diner. Meidi jokes that at this rate, they will end up getting paid for their free cooking practice, and Kane agrees. Kane smiles and makes a proposal to the other students. If they want him to make them omelets, they must give him their old textbooks or some tips about the exams. Julian appears with a grin, calling out to Kane and offering to introduce him to a part-time job with good pay. He explains that today is the last day of the flower festival, and if Kane hangs out with him for the whole day, he will pay him 3 large gold coins, adding that Kane better treat it as a favor from royalty. Kane is stunned by the offer of 3 large gold coins, realizing that with that amount of money, he would definitely be able to travel back to the Remuto Buriki Kingdom on the next holiday. He eyes Julian suspiciously, asking what exactly he is going to make him do. Julian is seen enjoying the festival, offering Kane pork dango skewers and pointing out the delicious potato dango. Kane now stands beside him, uncomfortably dressed as a beautiful girl with long hair and a ribbon. He furiously asks why he needs to cross-dress, but Julian tells Karen not to hold back. Kane argues that if Julian wants a companion for a date, he should go apologize to Siluria for boasting about his popularity and invite her instead. Julian refuses, saying he can't give in because if he tries to invite her now, he'll definitely have to say, "I love you," 100 times in front of the entire Midicurian family. Kane questions if he really needs to dress like this, But Julian explains that on the last day of the festival, a couple must spend the day together, and he cannot refuse an invitation if he is alone. Julian reasons that she only wants to try a little, and he will make her mistakenly believe that she will become his concubine if they spend the whole day together. He continues his flawed logic, saying that if he's with a girl as beautiful as Karen, no one will be brave enough to interrupt them, and Siluria wouldn't be angry if she knew it was him. From afar, Siluria watches them, thinking that Julian's love for her is mixed up with his general interest in the opposite sex, and he doesn't consider his actions to be cheating, failing to understand that she just doesn't want to see him with another woman. In the town square, musicians play for the crowd, noting with good timing that Julian-sama has arrived. A musician suggests that everyone is too shy to dance, but once the first pair starts, everyone else will surely follow. Julian laughs and agrees, declaring that he will take the lead. He turns to the disguised Kane and asks if he can dance. Kane recalls the story of Female Knight Nina, in which there is an episode where Nina asks a girl who is being left out to dance with her. Since his sister Diana often played that part, he learned the part for women. He smirks confidently, replying that of course he can dance. The two begin to dance in the square as the musicians play and onlookers watch. While they dance, Kane looks around and realizes that even though he is putting up with the shame, no one else is participating. He suggests they separate and go around to get the onlookers dancing with them, figuring that if they dance a little, they will suggest to their partners to do the same. Julian agrees that it's a clever idea, and Kane forcefully shoves him away with a cry. With a determined look, Kane announces it is time to start. He scans the crowd and his eyes land on a familiar face, Siluria, who stands watching. Julian dashes off into the crowd of onlookers. Kane, still in his disguise, approaches a man in the crowd, declaring that he shall dance with him. The man is Meidi-senpai, who panics and says he can't dance with another girl because his girlfriend is right there, only to realize his dance partner is Kane-sama. Kane tells him it's part of a plan and asks him to please cooperate with his girlfriend. Meidi and his girlfriend begin to dance, and Kane encourages everyone else to join in. Julian and Siluria still stand apart in the mostly empty space. They are still not dancing together. Kane, as Karen, approaches Siluria and asks the fair maiden if he could ask her to dance. Julian shouts Kane's name in surprise, while Siluria, confused, recognizes Kane-sama despite his appearance. Kane explains that this is a desperate measure by the prince, who was unable to invite her himself. Siluria giggles, and Kane tells her he's sorry about this, mentioning that the mental ages of men and women can differ by 3 to 10 years. He compares Julian to a child trying to get attention by shouting loudly, which is why he failed to properly invite Siluria-sama. Siluria looks on with a complicated expression, listening to Kane's words. Kane continues, saying that he wants her to keep Julian under control so he can become a man who doesn't neglect women. He thinks to himself that Diana would grow to have a nice body, and he won't let Julian choose her as a consort simply because of her breasts. Siluria asks what the punishment is for an insincere fiancé, and Kane suggests having them write a letter of apology is effective. She muses that she'll have him write, "I love you," 1,000 times. Kane advises her to be a little more mean, suggesting that when she invites Julian to play or study, she should make him call out to her first. He explains that he wants Julian-sama to experience even just a little of how Siluria-sama feels, an idea she thinks is great. Kane raises a hand with a sly smile and summons a gust of wind. He and Siluria stand together as flower petals swirl around them in a magical display. The crowd, including Meidi and his girlfriend, look up as the petals fall, while Julian watches Kane and Siluria. The entire square fills with dancing couples, enjoying the beautiful moment. The event concluded with people dancing happily as petals fluttered down, bringing this year's flower festival to a close. The next day, Siluria invites Kane-sama to her residence, explaining that her brother wants to talk about the Buriki kingdom, and he agrees to visit. Julian suddenly appears, shouting for them to wait a minute. He grabs Kane's arm, declaring that Kane will be going out with him starting tomorrow and that he hasn't heard anything about other plans. The next day, Julian tells Kane they will be riding to their destination, the planned location for the new capital. Kane looks up in shock at their mode of transport, a massive, winged flying dragon. Meanwhile, at the Elgrindark mansion, the focus shifts to Diana as she sits at her desk, diligently practicing the art of writing letters. She pauses her writing, a thoughtful and slightly concerned expression on her face as she holds her quill. During a lesson with her tutor, Sila-sensei, Diana asks if it would be irritating to start a letter with a lengthy, formal seasonal greeting. She explains with a bright, earnest face that she is sure her Oni-sama would want to know about her recent situation as soon as possible, without the preamble. Silas-sensei assures her that Kane-sama would be delighted simply by reading any letter that Diana-sama wrote. He elaborates, explaining that the more characters she writes, the more joy it would give Kane-sama, so she should write without worrying about being annoying. Diana's eyes light up with understanding, concluding that unnecessarily long greetings are actually a great way to pad out her word count. Ilverino questions this, asking why it's necessary if she already stated it was unnecessarily long, and Silas-sensei offers to answer any questions they have. The tutor begins his explanation, stating that first and foremost, a letter written on only a single sheet of paper is considered rude. Ilverino asks if that is the only reason, and Silas-sensei explains that nobles have immense pride and do not want people to think they are a stingy person who can only send one piece of paper. He continues, adding that a short greeting may cause one to be looked down upon for having a limited vocabulary, or lacking education, or even be misunderstood as a sign of disrespect. Ilverino clarifies if this means it's safer to use all the words you can, and the tutor confirms that while it might not be the reality, people could interpret it that way. Silas-sensei nods, agreeing that Ilverino understands quickly and explaining that for aristocrats, being wasteful is a luxury, and they use fancy words, clothes, and hairstyles to show their confidence. He clasps his hands, concluding that by doing so, they protect their self-esteem, their rights, and their partners. Diana finds this concept a little bit difficult to grasp. To help her understand, Silas-sensei offers an example, asking her if she wouldn't want to dress up when meeting with a person she likes. Diana's face lights up with joy as she declares that she does, and that she would wear a cute dress so that her Oni-sama will call her cute. Her tutor then asks what she would think if Kane-sama dressed up to meet her, and Diana imagines him looking splendid, concluding that she would think he was really looking forward to seeing her. Silas-sensei then poses the opposite scenario, asking what she would think if he dressed sloppily and spoke coldly to her, a thought which horrifies Diana. Ilverino and Diana now understand that wearing luxurious clothes and using the best words possible is a way of being considerate and showing respect. The tutor concludes the lesson on that topic for now, acknowledging that there are other ways to show consideration. Later, Diana and Ilverino are having tea with their maid, Sasha, in a sunlit room. Diana happily pops a pastry into her mouth. Sasha's sharp eye catches the unladylike motion. She sternly reminds Diana-sama that she shouldn't throw food into her mouth, causing Diana to flinch. Diana happily replies, okay, but Sasha corrects her again, stating that such a short answer is not appropriate. Ilverino observes that while the perfect maid Sasha is still strict, it seems she and Diana have become more comfortable with each other. Two small birds perch on the balcony railing near Diana's outstretched hands. As Diana tries to offer them food from her hands, the birds are startled and fly away, and Ilverino guesses they are still on guard from when she tried to catch them before. Diana turns to Aelkuin, saying that since Sasha likes stories, she thinks it would be best if she learned about the stories her Oni-sama told them before they try to recruit her. Ilverino agrees but reports that his search was fruitless. The stories of Gorokeo, Golden Gambler, and Unruly King are not on Kane-sama's bookshelf or in any of the libraries. Diana's face lights up with a brilliant idea as she declares that if there are no books, then they can just make one. She lays out her plan. She will summarize her Oni-sama's stories in a blank book, like one for a store, and then make Sasha read them. She assigns the tasks, stating that Aelkuin will write the story of the Unruly King, and she will write the other two, reassuring him that his pretty handwriting will be fine. Ilverino is shown alone in his room, sitting at a desk and beginning the laborious task of writing. He sighs, finding the process of writing carefully and waiting for the ink to dry is taking too much time. The butler, Palavant, enters the room, calling his name. Palavant hands him a book titled, An Elegant Lady's Evening, explaining that it is the most popular book among young women right now and that he should take it for reference. Ilverino reads a passage from the book, describing a princess with hair like sunlight and emerald eyes that flashed. He finds the prose difficult to understand, with too many examples that obscure the content. He concludes that for a commoner like him, it is quite hard to imagine the scenes described, and he can't even tell what color the princess's hair and eyes are supposed to be. He understands the story's premise. A tomboyish and outrageous princess causes trouble, but thanks to a quick-witted maid, everything goes smoothly. With the maid working in the background, the princess's words and actions are seen in a positive light, and she is ultimately worshipped and praised. Ilverino realizes that Sasha was likely influenced by this very book. He deduces that Sasha is very empathetic and easily influenced by stories, whether it was dreaming of marrying a knight after watching a drama or aiming to be the perfect maid after being inspired by this novel. He runs his hand over the handwritten book he is creating, thinking that Diana-sama's strategy will be surprisingly successful. He muses that since the princess in Sasha's book is not perfect, maybe she will let Diana-sama's own selfishness and tomboyishness off the hook a little. But unlike that princess, Diana-sama has the persona of both a lady and a knight, aiming to become a mysterious woman with two personas. Ilverino is struck by a sudden realization. The person Sasha should admire is not the princess in that book, but the hero in the book they are writing. Diana lets out a confused. Ilverino tells her they must make a story just like that, but she doesn't understand what he means. He clarifies, proposing a story about a duke's daughter who is actually a knight and goes on a journey to defeat villains, and she exclaims that's it. During their magic lesson, their teacher Tilmore-sensei finds the book they are working on, remarking that a knight sounds interesting but asking if mages aren't cool too, before getting swept up in the idea and derailing the lesson to write a story of her own. Tilmore declares that since their book is almost finished, it would be a waste to start class, so they should finish it, and she offers to write a new one as well. Diana and Ilverino look on, confused by their teacher's sudden enthusiasm. Tilnoir smiles, explaining that if a lot of people read such stories, they will start to think about how nice it would be if a real ally of justice existed. She becomes excited, announcing that she too will write a fun story about a mysterious female knight fighting for justice. She tells Diana that Kane-sama never depended on her, so entrusting these plots to her makes her very happy. Diana and Ilverino can only thank her for her passionate involvement. The scene shifts to a dark alley, where a large man is grabbing a woman who struggles to get away. A new figure appears in a cape, boldly telling the man to stop right there. Diana, now dressed as a masked magician, declares herself an ally of justice, telling the villain he won't be able to escape. She strikes a pose with her staff, warning the man that he had better prepare himself. Diana is shown back in the classroom, her face flushed with excitement after her heroic debut. Tilmore comments on how easily influenced Diana is, and Ilverino asks what happened to her being a knight, as Diana proudly announces the arrival of the beautiful masked magician. Ilverino asks their teacher if Diana can't just be a magical knight, and Diana explains that she wants to be both a knight and a magician. Tilnoir smiles brightly, saying that is definitely the best idea and that she will rewrite the story as Magic Knight Diana. Tilnoir tells Diana that if she asks Kane-sama, he will definitely make it happen, and Diana is certain her Oniai-sama will turn her into a magic knight. Sometime later, Diana calls out to Sasha from her room. Sasha returns a book she borrowed, saying the story of the former Prime Minister's journey was interesting, and Diana lends her the next book she has prepared. Diana beams, happy that Sasha liked the story. Sasha thinks to herself that recently her lady has been lending her books one after another. She examines the new book, noticing that although it is carefully written, it is clearly in children's handwriting. Ilverino asks Diana how things went after she gave Sasha the book they had prepared for her. Diana reports back from a conversation with her maid, stating that Sasha said the book was interesting, a response Ilverino finds ambiguous. With a confident smile, Diana declares that at last, it is time to carry out the plan to reveal her true nature to Sasha, but Ilverino remains unsure about the whole scheme. Diana and Sasha are later seen walking together through a garden, with Sasha holding a bouquet of flowers. Sasha pauses, wondering aloud why there is a shovel lying on the path in the middle of the garden. Suddenly, a hooded figure leaps from the trees, and Diana shouts a warning for Sasha to watch out. The robed assailant brandishes a sword and asks if she is Diana Elgrindark of the Duke's family, declaring that he will be taking her life. As Sasha gasps in shock, Diana calmly steps on the head of the shovel, flipping it up into her hands. She swings the makeshift weapon with expert form, deflecting the attacker's advance. With the shovel held defensively, Diana tells the unknown assailant that she will not surrender her life to the likes of him, and he leaps back to gain distance. Sasha cries out that Diana-sama shouldn't fight, but Diana ignores her, parrying another blow from the attacker's sword. With a powerful kick and another swing of the shovel, Diana drives the assailant back. She warns him that the guard knights will arrive soon and asks if he still wants to continue, prompting him to flee over the wall. Diana turns to the stunned Sasha, asking if she is okay and suggesting they go back to her room for now. Inside her room, a shaken Sasha sits in a chair, still processing what just happened. Diana asks if she should get some tea, and Sasha meekly agrees. As Ilverino brings in the tea tray, Sasha looks at Diana with wide eyes, whispering that she is so strong, and Diana prepares to make her big reveal. Diana smiles and asks Sasha to please keep what she saw a secret, explaining that if her mother and father find out, they will be angry with her. She declares that the Diana who is the eldest daughter of a duke is nothing but a temporary disguise, a revelation that leaves Sasha speechless. Diana leans in, telling Sasha that she revealed this secret because it is her she is talking with. Sasha stands abruptly, asking her lady to please wait for a moment before leaving the room. She returns moments later holding the handwritten books Diana had given her. Now seated again, Sasha remarks that the idea of a disguise to hide one's real nature also appeared in the book she was lent. She connects this to rumors she heard about a time when Diana-sama tried to join the training of the knights, asking if they are real. Diana confirms with a happy blush that the rumors are real, stating that she hasn't given up on her swordsmanship training and is actually very strong. Sasha asks if this unbecoming behavior is her real nature. Diana and Ilverino stand with serious expressions, waiting for the maid's reaction. Sasha reveals that she already knew Diana and Ilverino were talking casually and often had secret conversations when she wasn't around. She admits she was a little sad about being left out, but she understands that her lady has not yet had a place to separate her private and public lives, as she has yet to attend school or high society events. She tells Diana that she hopes she can switch between her public persona and her real nature when they are together. She continues, reminding Diana to please not forget her etiquette as a young noble lady. Diana asks Sasha if she is sure that she wants to get involved in the complexities of her private and public personas. With a determined look, Diana explains that she wanted Sasha, her closest maid, to be on her side. Sasha then asks if every other servant in the household, including her mother and father, only knows her public persona, which Diana confirms. The maid is shocked by the revelation, whispering even milord and milady? Sasha realizes with a pang of sadness that she had thought after the servants left, Diana would have time to be herself and be pampered by her parents. Taking Diana's hands, Sasha declares that if that is the case, she will serve Diana-sama not only in her public persona, but in her private one as well. Diana's face lights up with pure joy as she cries out Sasha's name. Sasha asks if the play they put on a while ago was cool, and Diana, being patted on the head, affirms that it was. The maid smiles, telling Diana that from now on, she will help cover up her secret, and asks her to teach her more about the real Diana-sama. Diana throws her arms around Sasha in a heartfelt hug, thanking her very much. Sasha maintains a bit of her professional demeanor, stating that their public relationship won't change and as a daughter of an aristocrat, there is a line Diana should not cross. She then turns a cold glare on Ilverino, telling him they have something to talk about later, as there are things one shouldn't do, even for acting, like pointing a knife at Oju-sama. That being said, Sasha then turns back to Diana with a smile. She tells her that for a long time now, there has been something she has wanted to give her. Sasha styles Diana's hair into cute twin pigtails, a gesture of genuine affection. Ilverino watches and realizes this is the scene Sasha admires from the book about the quick-witted maid and the princess. This is how Diana got another ally she can rely on. The scene shifts far away to the Cilium Kingdom. Cain and Julian stand on a rooftop before 3 large, saddled flying dragons. Cain is ecstatic, exclaiming that it really feels like he's been reincarnated to another world now. Julian boasts that these are dragons from the Dragon Rider squad and that he can ride them anytime, noting that they're fast but the fare is quite expensive. As they take flight, Julian warns that many people get wyvern sickness from the turbulent ride. The 3 dragons soar through the sky over a vast, mountainous forest. Julian explains that this country moves its capital city every 6 years, and they are now going to inspect the proposed site for the next one, which will be built when he is king. Cain looks down at the endless expanse of wilderness below, wondering if it's really possible to build a capital there in just 6 years. They land at the proposed site, a rocky clearing where other knights and dragons are already gathered. An official reports that there is room for development and it's close to the neighboring country of Sendel, making it the perfect place to move the capital. Julian agrees, adding the crucial caveat. They are ignoring the fact that this is a cursed land, as evidenced by a massive, glowing pentagram carved into the earth. He takes Cain's hands, stating that Cain's ability to use magic makes his studying abroad in their country a divine intervention. With a serious look, Julian asks Cain to please help them purify this land. Cain observes the camp, feeling overwhelmed by the request. He thinks that although he has developed the high abilities of his new body and become an excellent Cain, He is still just a 12-year-old student who can only devise simple strategies and help people in small ways within his reach. He knows that purifying an entire land is currently out of his capability. He thinks that he can't even use holy magic, just as Gianluca approaches and asks him to tell him about the magic of the Kingdom of Limoth. Cain recalls that Gianluca has magical energy and asks him what kind of magic he is good at. Gianluca replies that he doesn't have anyone to teach him, which is why he can't do anything as of now. He shows Cain an ornate bracelet on his wrist, explaining that it is a mana control device. He reveals that in Cilium, if you are born with magical power, they make it impossible for you to use magic. Cain is shocked as Gianluca explains that this is a country where the majority of people can't use magic, and if you make one mistake, you become a target of fear. Gianluca insists he is fine not being able to use it and is just curious, but Cain grips his arm. Cain knows that is a lie, because if Gianluca didn't want to learn, he wouldn't have approached him like this. A dark thought crosses Cain's mind. If he were to crush Jean-Luc now, he wouldn't be able to study at Damagaku, and the international student route that threatens Diana could be eliminated. But he immediately discards the idea, resolving that he would prefer to utilize their talent and see them properly evaluated. He turns to the young prince, calling out to Jean-Luc Sama. With a determined look, he tells the shocked boy that since he was born with magical power, it is better for him to study and use it. Julian Sama stands at the camp, observing the scene before him. Cain steps forward with Gianluca, asking His Highness to please take off Jean-Luc Sama's bracelet, confirming that Julian is keeping the key during the investigation. Julian looks away, stating that he cannot take that off and questions why Cain is asking all of a sudden. Cain points out the hypocrisy, noting that Julian didn't make him wear one of the restrictive bracelets. A nearby knight explains that Cain is a guest, and forcing him to wear those shackles would create an international issue. Besides, his advanced magical education ensures he will not lose control. Cain argues that the bracelet is a hindrance and declares that he can teach the young prince how to control his magic. He continues, suggesting that their remote location with only 9 knights present is the perfect place to practice without anyone peeking. Realizing that Julian clearly cares for his brother and just needs one more push, Cain recalls his earlier conversation with the prince. He turns directly to the young prince, asking Jean-Luc Sama if he would like to learn how to use magic. Gianluca's eyes widen with hope and excitement as he shouts that he wants to be able to control his magic. He adds that he wants to become a magician and be like Faka, a name that leaves Julian confused and pressing his temple in frustration. Julian relents, but only on the condition that they first gather ingredients in the forest, during which Gianluca can remove his bracelet after proving himself. Gianluca agrees, telling his brother to show him that he could at least hunt a rabbit, but Cain interrupts. Cain insists that the prince should start his magic training right away, arguing that he will teach Gianluca all the magic he can before the hunt, and asks for the bracelet to be removed now. In his past life, Cain often saw children get into fights because they were too impulsive, a mistake he does not want Gianluca to make. Julian finally concedes, handing the key to Cain and warning that if something happens that Gianluca can't control, he should put the bracelet back on right away. With the bracelet removed, Cain begins his lesson, instructing Gianluca to feel the mana flowing inside his body. Cain prepares to demonstrate a simple spell, telling Gianluca to repeat the incantation after him. He chants, "Little flame, come forth from my hand and spread the flames to my target," as a jet of fire erupts from his outstretched palm. Gianluca carefully repeats the incantation, and a small puff of flame and smoke appears between his hands. The young prince's face flushes with pure, unadulterated joy at his first taste of magic. He excitedly tells Cain that a flame appeared, and Cain confirms that it is quite remarkable for him to have made it on his first try, suggesting they try other elements too. Cain determines that Jean-Luc Sama seems very compatible with fire, wind, and earth magic, though he is unsure about holy and dark magic since he cannot use them himself. Gianluca then asks what the magician Faka he mentioned earlier is, exclaiming that he is amazing for using magic to make everyone happy. He describes the magician from the storybook, who saves kids in trouble by bringing out food from a tablecloth and giving them wings to fly. Cain finds this whimsical magic quite different from the magic in his country, while a nearby knight identifies it as a story from a famous picture book. The knight confirms that every kid in this country knows the story of Faka. He then apologizes to Cain, assuming he must have found the tools used to suppress magical powers unpleasant, but Cain tells him it's not something he should apologize for. The knight recounts the history, explaining that long ago in their country, someone born with magical powers caused trouble, which led to people shunning magic users. He clarifies that the magic control devices are not just for public safety, but also to protect people with magical powers from discrimination and exploitation, allowing them to live like normal people. The knight reveals a key piece of history. The magic-wielding princess of Limithburg, John Lucasama's grandmother, came here to be married into a royal family that had excluded magic. A movement then began to improve public sentiment towards magic, which is how the story of Faka Faka started. The sentiment of the citizens about magic improved, though even now there are still nobles who hate it. Julian dismisses the story, claiming his brother just wants to see magic up close, but the knight knows better. The knight is sure that the prince would also like to see the magic for himself. With the history lesson over, Julian announces that they are starting the hunt now. He instructs Gianluca to hunt monsters that can be used as ingredients, but warns him not to force himself or go too far, and to leave it to the knights if he can't compete. Cain whispers to Gianluca that he's being taken lightly and that this is his chance to get back at them. Cain instructs the young prince to ready his spell while they are walking, so that he won't be able to cast a spell in time after seeing his prey. He tells Gianluca to stay focused and not think about anything else, assuring him that it is okay to leave a gap between incantations. Gianluca finds the instruction difficult to follow. Cain offers an easier way: continue chanting the first part of the spell repeatedly, and only shout the final command when he sees his prey. He demonstrates the final command, shouting, "Spread the flames," as a nearby branch is incinerated. Cain explains that this is how he should chant it, and as he improves, he will gradually be able to omit the spells entirely. A horned rabbit appears in a clearing ahead of them. Gianluca identifies the magic beast, and Cain tells him that if he casts a spell right now, it might hit. Cain tells him not to hesitate to hit its head with fire magic, as the other teams are handling food procurement. He explains that these magical beasts won't die easily from just burning their extremities, but they die easily if you prevent them from breathing. Gianluca takes aim and casts his spell, "Little flame, come forth from my hand and spread the flames to my target." A small fireball hits the horned rabbit, killing it instantly as the knights erupt in cheers for John Lucasama's great job. The knights continue to praise John Lucasama's success. Cain approaches the prince, telling him that it's about time for his mana to run out. He explains that magical power is similar to mental power. When it gets low, you get sleepy, and your concentration and control become sloppy. Cain suggests that they had better go back to the camp now. Suddenly, a massive, tusked boar bursts from the undergrowth, and a knight shouts for them to be careful. An entire horde of the magic beasts emerges from the darkness of the forest. A knight tells John Lucasama to get behind him as the horde aims for them, but Cain steps forward, saying he can still produce fire and that they should leave this to him and the prince. Cain gathers a massive amount of energy, instructing John Lucasama to defeat any monsters that remain after he blows the main group away. He unleashes a powerful spell, shouting "Extreme Inferno." Back at the camp, Julian and a knight hear the massive explosion in the distance, with Julian noting how loud it was. Julian sees them returning from the forest and calls out to his brother, relieved that they came back safely. Gianluca proudly holds up his kill, exclaiming that he hunted a horned rabbit. Julian seems unimpressed, asking if that is the only thing he brought back, but Cain interjects that it takes skill to cast magic on such a small target. A knight calls out for help, and Julian sees a massive pile of roasted monsters being dragged back by a dragon, with the knight saying there's still a lot more in the forest. Julian stares in disbelief at the enormous pile of slain beasts. Gianluca cheekily remarks that it's helpful to have a larger target because they're easier to hit, prompting Julian to call them mean. The young prince tells his brother that it seems he is good at using fire magic. Gianluca smiles, saying that he can shoot a lot of it. Julian, now fully convinced, holds up the key to the bracelet, telling Cain that Jean-Luc can hold it for himself until they ride the dragon back home. He puts Cain in charge of his brother until then, as Gianluca thanks his brother with immense gratitude. Cain observes Julian-sama, noting that the prince doesn't really praise his younger brother very much. He thinks to himself that if it were him, he would shower his own sibling with praise, calling them a cute genius and the best. Gianluca turns to Cain and asks if he knows the story of how the Cilium Kingdom was founded. He explains that their country, filled with forests, wastelands, and monsters, began the periodic relocation of its capital in an attempt to increase the amount of livable space. Cain asks if that's why Julian-sama wants to build a new capital instead of moving the old one. Gianluca clarifies that his brother has other ideas that go beyond simple expansion. With a smile, he explains that although he was forbidden to study magic until now, He is always thinking about learning spells so he can be useful for his brother. Cain agrees to help, saying that while he is still inexperienced, he will teach the young prince to the best of his ability for the short time they have. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out at the camp as knights cry out in alarm. Julian asks what the matter is, and a knight reports that a monster in the loading compartment, thought to be dead, jumped away and is still alive. Cain and the princes are surprised by this news, especially by where the monster fled. The monster is now on the other side of the massive magic circle, proving that the living cannot pass through its boundary. That night, the camp is lit by torches under a starry sky. Gianluca excitedly eats a skewer of meat from the monster he hunted, while Julian asks Cain for his thoughts on the magic circle. Cain takes a bite of the meat offered by Gianluca and declares it's very delicious, prompting Julian to grumble that he should give his brother a proper reaction. Cain reflects that Prince Julian is not a bad person and is not without compassion, but he is too insensitive to other people's wishes. This insensitivity is especially true towards his fiancée and his little brother, which makes the people around him anxious. Julian asks to continue their conversation, mentioning a rumor that a village of witches existed on this land before, a concept foreign to Cain as there are no witches in Damagaku. Cain admits that he is not that well informed about this topic. He explains that he only knows the legend of a scary being and that the area is said to be cursed due to ruins where nothing can grow and a magic circle that cannot be erased. After inspecting it, however, Cain states that he doesn't feel any bad feelings from the magic circle itself. He concludes that the problem is the forest, as there are too many monsters inside it. Using a cup as an example, he theorizes that the cursed land is accumulating bad things, and the magic circle is acting as a lid to contain it. Julian understands the terrifying implication. After a long time, evil things started spilling out from the gaps in the lid, causing the birth of demonic beasts. Julian then asks if it's okay to build a castle on top of the magic circle if it's a good one. Cain suggests that since demonic beasts dislike sunlight, clearing the forest might make them disappear. He cautions that his country doesn't use magic circles, so he doesn't know much about them, but he will try to find out what he can. Cain warns them, however, that his investigation of the magic circle and the purification of the land will probably not produce the results they expect. Gianluca eagerly declares that he will help look into the documents when they get back to the royal capital, with Julian looking on silently. The camp settles down for the night under a sky full of stars. In his tent, Cain lies awake, his thoughts consumed by demonic beasts and witches. He drifts off to sleep, his mind still racing. He wonders if the cursed land has something to do with the demon forest and the demon king from the Holy Night route in the game. He dreams of a great hall, where a figure descends the stairs with a yawn. In his dream, Diana has turned into a demon lord, and he congratulates her on becoming the new demon king. He asks what she wants to do first, and she wonders what demon lords usually do. He suggests world domination, and she agrees, reasoning that then no one would be angry if a woman became a knight, or if she had a snack at night. He tells her, of course, and they embrace happily in his dream. The next morning, Cain wakes up looking dazed and exhausted. Julian comments that his face looks disgusting and asks if he is tired, while Gianluca worries if he would like to sleep a little longer. Cain snaps to attention, saying pardon him, but he's been thinking about holy magic and magic circles. Julian admits he thought Cain was thinking about something perverted, causing Gianluca to look worriedly at his brother. Cain begins his morning routine. Gianluca, having seen him, asks if his morning runs have something to do with the output of his magic. Cain explains that stamina and physical strength are needed to withstand the spells one casts, and are also necessary for a quick withdrawal from the front lines. He continues, stating that since mana is stored inside the body, having more physical volume is a good thing, and training your body is a logical way to prepare for the dangers of magic. As he speaks, a sudden sound cuts through the air. A group of knights comes running back to the camp, with Gianluca crying out for his brother. A massive swarm of demonic beasts, including giant spiders and boars, chases the knights, and Julian realizes they are waiting to ambush them outside the magic circle. Julian laments that they don't have enough forces to eliminate them, and Cain suggests scaring them with a flying dragon, but Julian reveals the dragons are docile herbivores that would faint if attacked. The knights take positions within the magic circle as the horde of monsters gathers just outside the boundary. Gianluca asks if they can't repel them with magic like they did yesterday. Julian turns to Cain, giving him permission to do something about them without holding back, saying he won't mind if the forest burns in the process. Cain tells everyone to stand back, confirming that he understands, and that he's been practicing hard to control the output of his magic since the last time he overdid it. He stretches, remarking that it's been a while since the last time he didn't need to hold back as he combines the elements of fire and wind. He chants for the elements to gather at his fingertip. With a final command to blow away all enemies before him, he unleashes Fiery Explosion. A massive torrent of magical energy erupts from his hand. The knights and princes watch in awe as the landscape is consumed by a blinding light. The force of the blast throws Julian and the knights to the ground. The shockwave rips through the camp, sending Cain tumbling backward. From the ground, Julian looks out at the devastated, smoking crater where the forest and monsters once stood, calling out Cain's name in alarm. Julian rushes to Cain's side, asking if he is all right. Cain, lying exhausted on the ground, replies that he used all of his strength and is going to sleep now. Gianluca stares at the aftermath, admitting he didn't expect Cain to go this far. He realizes that when Cain uses fire magic, his eyes changed from blue to purple, and they were beautiful. This, he thinks, is what magical talent looks like. Julian muses that maybe if Gianluca uses enough magic, his eye color would probably change too. The young prince's face lights up with excitement at the possibility. Julian smiles warmly, telling his younger brother that he will watch over him. Julian then turns to the knights and tells them he will use magic so they should look at his eyes, confusing everyone. Cain sits up, asking Julian if it's alright for him to wake up so fast and advising him that if he wants to be pampered, he has to pamper others too. Julian denies ever saying that he wanted to be pampered. Cain tells him that if he wants to be a good brother, he can't be so whimsical and needs to act like one from time to time. He instructs Julian to listen to his brother's story, respond properly, and compliment him when he does something impressive. Julian looks away, flustered and unsure how to respond. Cain continues his lecture, reminding Julian that yesterday his brother did his best to defeat a lot of demonic beasts and he should have given him clear praise. He points out that Julian took his 9-year-old brother on a wild research trip, forced him to sleep alone in a tent, and fed him chunks of monster meat, so he should give him credit. Julian glares as Cain declares that, as he thought, Julian must have a little brother or sister, a fact Cain furiously denies, shouting that he's a lone child. Julian finally seems to understand, turning and calling out, "Gianluca." His younger brother turns, surprised to hear his name. Julian walks over and places a comforting hand on his brother's shoulder, sharing a genuine moment. Cain reflects that he unintentionally blurted all that out because he was comparing the two of them to him and Diana. He resolves that while that is settled, there is one other person he needs Julian to change his attitude towards. Julian-sama is swarmed by adoring female students, all asking to accompany him as he leaves the school premises. He is pressed on all sides by their affection. A group of male students, including Cain, watch the scene unfold, with one pointing out that the girls are trying to flirt with the prince. A girl explains to her friend that in this country, high-ranking aristocrats like marquises and dukes can have at least 3 wives, while the king can have at least 4. Cain thinks about the future, envisioning King Julian and Queen Siluria. He then imagines Julian seeing Diana's beautiful figure and deciding to make her his concubine, a future Cain is determined to prevent. Cain joins his classmates' discussion, asking if polygamy is a duty rather than a freedom, a question that surprises them. Siluria and her friend Eulphilis approach the group, remarking that they seem to be having an interesting conversation. The girls ask if they can join, and a student named Gelatoni wonders what their powerful houses think of the matter, since his own family has nothing to do with polygamy. Desiderana, the eldest son of a marquis, explains that things go well for his family because they have a strict order of succession and his father loves all 3 of his wives. Cain listens, noting that Din's father must be a loving man. Another student, Aluart, also the eldest son of a marquis, explains that in his case, the 2nd and 3rd wives are business partners with his father. He clarifies that his father's legal wife is in the royal capital, while the other 2 wives manage the estate, a situation that confuses the others. Aluart explains that there are aristocratic ladies who want to run the economy, but it's hard to get a job, so marriage offers them shared interests and a way to enrich their territory. One student concedes that he has also heard rumors of families who are in trouble for being polygamous. Desiderana admits he is not confident that he could handle 3 women and wonders what Julian-sama would do. The group looks over at Julian, still being fawned over by girls, and wonders how he would even choose a concubine from among them. Siluria interjects that Julian-sama does have standards about what kind of woman he will choose. The entire group deadpans the answer in unison, a girl with huge tits. The scene shifts to the imposing royal palace. Julian's cousins greet him, teasingly noting that he seems to have left behind Gianluca, the magical outcast, today. An attendant informs Julian that His Majesty the King is waiting for him inside, and he proceeds with a serious expression. In the throne room, the king tells Julian that they can't postpone the decision on the next capital any longer. He instructs Julian to give up on building a new capital and instead choose a place from within the old royal capital. Julian stands alone before the throne, his hopes dashed. He sits dejectedly by a window back in his room at the academy. Cain finds him there and calls out his name. Julian asks if Cain thinks he is unreliable, wondering aloud who he is even meant to rely on, the citizens. He asks Cain if he also thinks that moving the capital to the forest was a reckless idea, and Cain bluntly replies, "I do." Julian looks hurt, asking why Cain didn't just pretend to think about it for a while before answering. Cain states that there's no point in being pretentious, even if there were no problems with monsters or magic circles, it's impossible to build a city in 6 years. He then asks Julian if there is no other choice than giving up on his plan. Julian looks away, his expression troubled. Cain presses him, asking what Julian-sama really wants to do. Julian finally confesses that he just wants to move the capital. He explains that the candidate sites the king mentioned are all completed walled cities, where the limited land is already occupied by old nobles and merchants, leaving no space for new citizens. He wants to build a new capital to give young people like Mady, the student from the cafeteria, a chance to open new stores in the castle town. Cain takes the prince's hand, telling him he has no reason to give up and that they should make the new town together. He acknowledges they don't have enough time, and a city built in a rush in 6 years would be far from ideal, but he has another idea. Cain proposes a new timeline. What if the capital will be relocated in 100 years, giving them sufficient time to make proper preparations? Julian is stunned by the idea of 100 years, and Cain points out that since they are still 12 years old, they don't have enough knowledge about city development anyway. Cain reminds Julian of his father's instructions to build a network among young nobles, declaring that this is a great chance to build connections. He suggests they find students from the architecture department, those aiming for high-ranking positions in education and trade, and even the son of the lord near the witch's village. Julian protests that it seems like making friends for a selfish reason. Cain clarifies that it's a huge project that will take 100 years to complete, so Julian must look for people he can trust and walk with. He paints a picture of a group of friends who can talk to each other and say, "Let's build a town together." Julian is moved by the word friends, and agrees that Cain is right. Sometime later, Julian and his new group of friends are discussing plans over a meal. A classmate brings up the previous topic, asking what Julian plans to do with his 3 concubines. Cain explains to a confused Julian that polygamy and the talent of concubines became hot topics earlier in the day, framed as a discussion of human resources. Aluard winks at Julian, asking if he's confident he can force himself to love 3 more people, even though the truth is His Highness only loves Saluria-sama alone. Julian flushes bright red, stammering at Aluard's directness. Aluard continues, stating that the only reason Julian dates the other female students who approach him is to see if Saluria truly loves him. Julian tries to deny it, but he is too flustered to form a coherent sentence. Cain then chimes in, asking His Highness what's so good about fake boobs and if he really likes them so much. Julian can only choke out the words, "fake tits?" in shock. The other students are confused, asking what they mean by fake boobs. Cain explains that all the girls flocking to Julian are 12 or 13, and while big breasts exist, it is statistically impossible for all of them to be so developed. He reminds Julian of his Karen-sama disguise as proof that women's chests can be made. He recalls how they created the illusion, stuffing the chest of the dress with clothes shaped from cotton and even packing socks inside. The devastating revelation leaves Julian completely shattered. The next morning, a hollow-eyed Julian is greeted by the usual crowd of adoring girls. This time, however, all of their chests are noticeably more modest. Cain smugly reveals that last night, he purposefully spread a rumor that Julian-sama said that he prefers a modest size with a nice shape more. Julian sits alone, looking utterly dejected by the turn of events. Cain finds him and points out that he has the most beautiful woman in the country as his fiancée, yet he's never invited her out himself, asking him how about inviting her this time. Julian looks out to the courtyard and sees Saluria sitting on a bench with her friend. He approaches them nervously, calling out his fiancée's name. He asks her if she has time after school and if she would like to join him to see the view from the rooftop. Siluria's friend is visibly shocked by the direct invitation. Siluria's friend offers to accompany them, but Julian declines, saying there is no need for an escort. Julian takes a calming breath, steeling his resolve. He looks directly at her and formally declares, "I am inviting my fiancée Siluria on a date." He asks what she thinks of the offer, looking anxious. Siluria breaks into a radiant, happy smile, telling him that she has been waiting for that. From the rooftop, Cain watches them, thinking that while he is still unsure if Julian will become a lewd king in the future, he muses that if Julian turns out to be a king who genuinely loves the queen, the future might definitely change. Diana, Sasha, and Ilverino travel together in their carriage. The carriage lurches to a halt, waking a sleepy Diana who asks if they have arrived already, but Ilverino informs her it is still too early to reach the town where they can stay. A knight outside shouts an order for all three of them to please stay inside the carriage. He declares that they will chase the attackers away now. Sasha realizes they are being set upon by bandits, while Diana eagerly asks if she should go out too, claiming that she is also quite strong. Both Ilverino and Sasha immediately tell her that she should not, pleading for her to stop. Ilverino explains to Diana-sama that their 4-day trip will take them through 4 territories, making it a journey around the country, which reminds her of the story of the wise old man. Inspired, Diana points out the window and calls to her knights, Philsan and Digsan, telling them to punish the bandits for their villainy. The knights, named Phylarge and Ardig, confidently tell Diana-sama to leave it to them, with Phylarge smiling that this is nothing more than an exercise after breakfast. The scene shifts to a grand city overlooked by a large castle. Back at the academy in Cilium, Cain's classmates wilt in the summer heat, complaining that it's hard to get motivated while noting that nothing seems to cut off Cain-sama's focus. Cain is filled with a singular, driving thought as the month and a half of summer vacation approaches. He can go in to meet Diana. He works furiously at his desk, surrounded by stacks of books and papers, his focus absolute. At last, the semester's classes are finally over, and his classmates collapse in relief. Julian tells them to hurry up and prepare to return to their territories, then asks Cain-sama why he always maintains such a cool face. The other students realize the truth. He's suspicious, making ice and covering himself with cold air to stay cool. They all rush to cling to him, feeling revived by the cold air as a grand carriage pulls up outside the school. The students marvel at the massive carriage being pulled by 4 horses. They wonder if it is Julian-sama's carriage, but Cain sees who steps out and knows it is not. Ilverino stands by the carriage, waiting for his master. Cain calls out his name in surprise, and Ilverino smiles, telling Cain-sama that they came to pick him up. Ilverino explains that he heard Cain wasn't given enough money to go home, but assures him that his master is not so cold-hearted as to forbid him from returning for the long vacation. Cain's face falls as he realizes Diana-sama is not with him. Ilverino says that however, they can meet her in less than a week's travel time. He relays Diana's logic. If they meet near the border between Limithburg and Cilium, the time she would be able to spend with her Oniai-sama would be longer. Palavant informs him that Diana-sama is currently waiting for them at Lord Nelgrandy's castle near the border. Cain arrives at the grand castle and sees a familiar figure standing at the top of the stairs. Diana, dressed in a lovely bonnet and dress, welcomes her Oniai-sama back. A beautiful smile graces her face as she looks at her brother. Cain is completely overwhelmed, crying out, "Diana," and gushing that she is so cute his eyes feel like they'll be crushed, praising her sleeves and flushed cheeks. Diana tells him there is no point in him being like this, even though she was secretly trying to hide her own excitement. Cain collects himself and formally declares that he is back, and that he is extremely happy to have met her after such a long time, a sentiment she happily reciprocates. She leaps into his arms, exclaiming that Dee has grown up. He catches her with a joyful expression. Cain happily spins her around, shouting that he missed her, while Sasha and Ilverino stand beside a large pile of luggage. His cousin, Keels, and a young woman named Cordelia arrive, with Keels commenting on the large amount of luggage. Cain explains that while there are souvenirs for everyone, the gifts are all for Diana. The two are formally introduced as Brother Keels and Cordelia. Keels' parents, Cain's uncle and aunt, announce a welcome party in the garden and say they will introduce him to the people of the territory. When asked what she wants to do, Diana declares she wants to go fishing for a fish as big as herself, rejecting Cordelia's suggestion of shopping for clothes. Cain immediately agrees that he will go fishing, causing Cordelia to realize that to get Cain to act, she must first work things out with Diana. Kane's thoughts reveal his cousin, Keels, is the capture target in the older senior route of the Otome game he remembers. In that route, Kane, the game's protagonist, falls in love with another, gives up his position as heir to the dukedom, and becomes a commoner to obtain true familial love. With the Elgrendark family having lost their heir, Keels is made to marry Diana to ensure the continuation of the dukedom. However, because Keels already has a lover in this scenario, he is torn away from his beloved and cannot bring himself to love Diana. Neglected by her husband, Diana slowly becomes mentally ill and her life turns chaotic. Kane recalls a scene from the game where he encounters a completely changed, broken Diana on the street. To prevent this future, Kane abruptly asks Keels if he has a girlfriend right now, flustering his cousin. Cordelia answers for him, explaining that he has someone he likes, but they are not yet a couple, prompting Kane to confirm that he has one. Keels becomes extremely flustered, claiming he remembers something important he needs to attend to. He quickly flees the room, and Diana reveals that the person Kikun likes is named Stiritz. The parents laugh, saying that he's trying to hide it but has been found out, and that it would be good if he finally confessed. Kane thinks to himself that this is convenient, as the relationship is practically approved by his parents. Since his own route no longer exists, Diana will never marry Keels, but just in case, he wants to get Keels and the person he loves engaged as soon as possible. He muses that he would be fine with Diana becoming happy with Prince Al, Julian, or Keels, as long as her love is reciprocated. The thought of accepting their marriage, however, fills him with immediate dread. He resolves that he will never allow it. Diana would never be happy in a loveless arranged marriage or with someone who only wants her for her body. Keels mentions that he needs to go back to work soon, and Kane asks if the nights are busy, but Keels clarifies that it's the season when the fields need help. Kane looks concerned as Keels explains that lately, he has been getting a lot of complaints about young farmers skipping work. Keels elaborates that many of their knights are the second or third sons of farming families, so a small number are temporarily returning to help or fill vacant positions. He smiles confidently, saying that the territory was entrusted to him by his older brother and that he will do fine. Cordelia recalls the day she met her cousin Kane 3 years ago. Kane introduced himself as Kane Elgrendark, telling her and her brother Keels that after hearing their story from his uncle, he had always wanted to meet them. He was overwhelmed with emotion that his wish had come true, and Cordelia was instantly smitten, thinking he was like a prince. She couldn't believe she had a relative like him, so completely different from the rough father and rude older brother in her own territory. As Keels suggested they stop with the formal greetings, Diana introduced herself, causing Cordelia to freeze. The memory shifts to Diana in a cute bunny outfit, a sight that caused Kane to collapse in a fit of adoration. He cried out that Diana was too cute, leaving Cordelia to wonder what was happening. Diana, pleased by the reaction, turned to Cordelia and asked, "Is Dee cute?" To which Cordelia replied that he said she was cute. Cordelia, however, bluntly told Diana that the outfit didn't suit her and was just normal, in her opinion. The harsh words brought tears to Diana's eyes, and Cordelia looked on in shock. Kane comforted his sister, explaining that the definition of cute varies from person to person, just as some people find carrots delicious while others find them disgusting. He gently told Diana there was no need to be disappointed, because he personally thinks she's cute. Diana's face lit up with a happy smile as she took in his words. Cordelia watched them, a tear welling in her own eye as Kane smiled and told his sister it was fine. A happy Diana then turned to Cordelia and declared that Dee thinks Cody is cute. Keels and Kane both agreed that Cordelia is cute, a consensus of praise that flustered her. A blushing Cordelia turned and fled, shouting that she hated them all as Keels remarked that she can't be honest and stubborn, but it all shows on her face. Cordelia reflects that after falling in love with Kane at first sight, she became more careful not to appear rough and masculine. But every year when she met Kane, his kindness only made her heart pound, leading to repeated disappointments for her. In the present, Ilverino advises Cordelia-sama that if she is going after Kane-sama, it's better to get along with Lady Diana, while Keels bluntly tells her Kane is a pervert and she should stop. Time passed, and Cordelia came to realize that she could not win the heart of Kane, who always puts Diana first. She recalls him giving her souvenir gloves and a parasol, a kind gesture she had to thank him for. In Diana's room, she tries on a variety of souvenir costumes Kane brought her, including a dinosaur and a witch outfit. Kane and Sasha shower her with praise, calling her an angel and saying that all the costumes really suit her. Kane encourages her to try everything, since all the souvenirs are for her, and Diana excitedly points out other cute dresses. From the doorway, Cordelia watches the lively scene, resolving that she will protect Diana from everything that threatens her. Diana, now dressed as a female knight, turns to Cordelia with an open hand and declares, "You are my everything." The heartfelt declaration makes Cordelia blush furiously. Kane, Sasha, and Ilverino are amazed by Diana's gallant appearance, with Kane exclaiming that she looks as cool as he does. Cordelia clutches her chest, wondering why she is so upset by Diana's words. Later, the boys, Kane, Keels, and Ilverino, are ready to go fishing. Diana appears, sporting the twin-tailed hairstyle of the game's version of Diana, a sight that shocks Kane. She asks if her new hairstyle, which Sasha curled for her, is cute, and a flustered Kane can only manage to say that she looked like a princess. Ilverino asks Kane if he's alright, noting with concern that it's the first time he's seen that hairstyle, but Kane is not more impressed. Kane dismisses his concern, insisting it's nothing and asking what Ilverino takes him for. They arrive at the rocky riverbank to fish, with Cordelia following behind. Diana declares that she will also be collecting fishing bait, and Keels instructs her to find river worms under the rocks and collect them in a bucket. Diana looks under a rock and is met with a horrifying sight of wriggling worms. She screams and runs away, declaring that she will play with Cordelia today instead. The girls sit together under a parasol while the boys continue to fish. Suddenly, one of the lines gets a massive bite, and they pull a huge fish from the water. While fishing, Keels asks Kane what he is going to do now that Cody has fallen for him. Kane replies that he thinks Cordelia is cute for being affectionate towards her relatives, but he can't just turn her down before she has even confessed. Keels, knowing how Kane feels about his sister, presses him, asking if there's any way he could really do it. Kane's expression darkens as he says that if Diana had been treated coldly by a man she loved, he would have killed that person, a statement that horrifies Keels. Diana asks Cordelia if she likes swimming, but Cordelia apologizes, saying she didn't wear clothes appropriate for the water. Diana is disappointed, saying she wanted to splash around in the water with Cordelia. Kane, Keels, and Cordelia exchange looks. Keels smiles and tells Diana that his brother knows a better place for swimming. He promises that next time, they will all come and play together. The group gathers around a fire, roasting the fish they caught and enjoying the meal. Kane helps Diana with her food, their faces close together as she winks playfully. Sasha watches them, remarking that it's too late now, but when she sees the two beautiful faces huddled together, she feels a bit strange. Cordelia tells Sasha there is no need to worry. Sasha explains that this feeling is called hako-ashi. Cordelia repeats the term, while Ilverino thinks to himself that what Sasha is feeling is probably something different. As the group walks back from the river, Keels asks if they caught any big fish. Ilverino spots some people approaching and asks Kane-sama if they are acquaintances, but Keels recognizes the leader as the stupid son. A smug young man and his two companions block their path. The young master, Keels, greets him, and the man says he has something to discuss with Cody. Cordelia refuses, telling him she doesn't want to talk, but Keels tells her that she said she doesn't want to. The young man, however, insists, revealing that he wants Cody to attend the welcoming party for the Duke's son as his partner. He then looks at her with a sinister grin and declares, "As my future fiancé." Keels tells him that Cordelia doesn't allow him to use her nickname, but the man says she gave him permission the other day and that he will be her escort, so Keels is not needed. He then turns to Kane, asking who he is and if he prefers little girls, since he's not interested in women his own age. He explains his motives, stating that he and the Lord are in charge of managing the territory's farmland while Cordelia's father is busy, so their marriage is a matter of consolidation. Kane listens with a thoughtful expression, finding the situation interesting. He asks the man if this political marriage proposal is because he loves Cordelia. Kane points out that the Lord of the Nelgrandi territory is currently in the royal capital, and the man representing him is his younger brother, Keels, and Cordelia's father. He mockingly asks if the man, who doesn't even know who the Lord is, thinks a political marriage makes him laugh. Enraged at being exposed and confused by the facts, the young man accuses Kane of making fun of him and lunges forward. Kane calmly stands his ground as Ilverino and the others watch. With a simple gesture, Kane summons a massive splash of water from the nearby river. The wave crashes over the young man and his companions, leaving them soaked and sputtering on the ground. Kane asks them if that cooled off their heads and offers to explain in more detail if they still don't understand. He then suggests they do it while staying calm and drinking tea. The humiliated young men can only grit their teeth and retreat. The group watches them go, the confrontation seemingly over. Diana asks Kane why he isn't going to defeat the bad guys, but Kane smiles and explains that they should let it be, because they are in a country ruled by law. Kane then asks Keels who that stupid son was, and Keels explains that his name is Ernie, the son of the man in charge of the land management business. Cordelia adds that she didn't Kane tell him that her brother has a woman he likes. Keels places a hand on Cordelia's shoulder and reveals the complication. The woman he likes is Ernie's little sister. At a garden party, Keels remarks that Ernie wasn't like that before. He reminisces that Ernie was a nice guy from the neighborhood who would often play with him and Stieritz, and whose family had looked out for them since they were little. But then he suddenly started flirting with his sister, Cody. Cordelia thanks Kane for chasing them away peacefully, even though he almost got hit. Kane reflects that he had heard his uncle's administration of the territory was close to the people, but he didn't realize it involved such close family-to-family relationships. He observes the tension between Keels, a noble, and Stieritz, a commoner, and how they couldn't seem to get over it. He realizes that keeping Ernie away is not going to be easy. Turning to Keels, Kane brings up the fact that Ernie's sister, Stieritz, is the one he likes, and asks why he doesn't just get engaged to her first. Keels is flustered by the blunt suggestion. Kane explains that if Ernie is pestering Cordelia to forge a bond between their families, then Keels getting engaged to Ernie's sister would fulfill that wish in another way. He adds a warning: if his father, the Duke, hears about Ernie stalking Cordelia, Ernie's entire family might be shunned, so finalizing an engagement would be the better path. Keels panics at the thought of proposing, asking what he should do if he gets rejected. He laments that Stieritz is beautiful and that many other people are after her. Cordelia smiles, saying she doesn't think Stieritz is bad at all, and Kane adds that his brother probably won't take an aristocratic wife anyway, so Keels shouldn't be so reserved. Kane tells him to go find out how Stieritz feels and then talk to his uncle and aunt about the engagement that very night. Everyone rallies behind him, with Diana cheering for Kikuan and Cordelia telling her brother to do his best. Kane declares that this is for Cordelia's sake, and for Diana's future too. The mansion staff presents a nervous Keels with a large bouquet of flowers. They tell him to please take it to Stieritz-sama, which causes him to scream in embarrassment and shout, "Enough already!" He snatches the bouquet and runs off, yelling that they had all better remember this. The group waits under a pergola, wondering if his proposal went well. A servant approaches Kane-sama, informing him that Ernie is coming to visit. Ernie is stopped at the gate by the guards, but he says that if they are going to give him an explanation, he'd like to hear it. Kane appears, telling Cordelia not to worry and that he can explain it in detail as he approaches the disgraced young man. Kane and Diana formally introduce themselves, stating their names and their father's title as the Duke of Elgrindark. Ernie is humbled, realizing his mistake, and humbly asks for forgiveness for acting so rudely towards the Lord's son earlier. He asks Kane what he can explain to him, wanting to know what is going on. Kane clarifies that Ernie correctly pointed out that his uncle Exmachus is very busy, which is why his aunt is coordinating with Ernie's parents to manage the territory. He continues, explaining that aristocratic marriages are not just about politics, as his own parents had a marriage out of love, and there is no need to deepen the family bond through a forced marriage with Cordelia. Kane then lays out his conditions, saying that if Ernie truly loves Cordelia so much that he can't sleep at night, and if he can be considerate, not intimidating, and if Cordelia herself has feelings for him, then perhaps things could be different. Ernie is moved, confessing that about Cordelia-sama, he actually does love her. He explains that they have been playing together since they were little and that he even taught her how to study. Just then, Keels appears in the garden, telling Ernie to hold his horses. He walks hand in hand with a blushing Stieritz, who covers her face in embarrassment. Keels announces that he confessed to Stieritz and they got engaged, with his parents' approval. He tells Ernie that the family ties are now connected, so he should stop forcing himself on Cordelia. Ernie can only stare at Stieritz in disbelief. He asks her if she is really fine with this, and she replies that her brother should know that Keels-sama is a great, cool, and kind person. Keels tells Stieritz that he doesn't mind if she calls him by his first name, and she shyly says he can call her Sudi, too. Ernie watches the new couple, dumbfounded. He mutters that even if Stieritz gets married, it doesn't count, as his father only received a title for one generation for the sake of appearance. He feels that not only was he rejected by Cordelia, but the guard of the people around him has also tightened, leaving him with nothing. A flashback shows Ernie's father addressing a group of commoners, telling his son that after liberating the mansion and storehouse, he will marry a relative of the Lord and take control of the domain. The father's goal is to protect everyone in the land from the nobles, and he asks if Ernie will do it. He places a hand on his son's shoulder, saying he will leave it to him. The memory ends, and Ernie asks Diana if she is the Lord's daughter. With a crazed look in his eyes, he declares that in order to lead this territory to a better future, Diana-sama should get married to him. Cain is stunned, asking if that is a political strategy too. He realizes with cold fury that if Cordelia didn't work, Ernie's next plan was to marry Diana based on her family status. Cain's face contorts with rage as he screams, "Don't fuck with me!" Ilverino senses his master's killing intent as Cain begins to freeze the ground around him. Ilverino shouts for Sasha to take Diana-sama into the mansion, and for everyone to hurry up. Cain glares at Ernie, telling him that he cannot make Diana happy. His voice drips with venom as he says that even though Ernie can't make her happy, he can't believe he would still desire her. The ice spreads rapidly, encasing Ernie and his men as Cain deems it unforgivable. Ernie's father's words echo, about creating a world where commoners can live independently from nobles. He remembers his father saying the nobles need to understand this. As Cain lifts a heavy chair to bring it down on the frozen Ernie, Ilverino realizes that this is bad. Keels rushes in and grabs Cain's arm, stopping the blow just in time. He asks what happened here, stunned by the sight of the frozen men and Cain's rage. Cain struggles against Keel's grip, yelling for his Aji-sama to let him go. Keels tells him to calm down, pointing out that he is about to kill him, and promises to take care of it if Ernie really did something so terrible. Diana runs out from the mansion, calling for her Oniisama as he shouts that he can't contain his anger. She touches his arm gently, telling him that she thanks him for being angry on her behalf, but asks him to please calm down for a moment. Her calm and gentle voice breaks through his rage, leaving him stunned and speechless.